Hey everybody, tonight we're debating atheism versus theism, which best explains morality, and we are starting right now. With our theist guest, Arjuna. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Right, let me just get my special victory couch. So today I'm defending the proposition that theism gives a better explanation for objective morality than atheism. I think there's two things that a system of objective morality needs to give us. Those two things are we need to get objective values, and you need to get some kind of should or should not statements out of it. I don't think you can have this on atheism. Also, you could say that the shoulds or should nots are derived from the values. So maybe you could say there's just one thing you need: objective values. Objective here means that their value is independent of what anybody thinks of them. So, you know, if it's the case that suicide's wrong, then it's wrong, even if everybody thinks it's right, and so on. Whereas money has subjective value. So if people change their opinion on which currency has value, then that changes which currency has value. So the reasons why I think atheism can't account for objective morality are, first of all, ontological. I think two key factors of an objective morality are the fact that conscious entities exist which are capable of suffering, and I don't think atheism can account for that. Of course, that's a different debate, the hard problem of consciousness and so on. But there's lots of reasons to think consciousness is fundamental. That's a debate we can have another day. And the other thing you need is to have shoulds or should not. So even if we do have on atheism the ability for other living entities to suffer, we still need to give some kind of should or should not statements. And so why should I care about the suffering of another living entity? You always give an argument for why you should not do something based on some value. A murder's wrong. Well, I don't care about that. Well, you're going to go to jail if you murder. Well, I don't care if I go to jail. You know, any kind of argument you could give, somebody could just reject the value, which is a key premise in your argument, and then you'd have nothing. So on atheism, I can't see what you could possibly say to somebody who doesn't accept the values. Whereas on theism, I think it is possible to have objective morality for a few reasons. One is because you can have objective values. So you have a deity who is a personification of good, and they are the source of objective morality. And also because you can have a system of rewards and punishments for certain actions. You know, in the Hare Krishna tradition, we call this karma, and it goes across many lifetimes. It explains a lot. And this can give an argument to anybody, regardless of what values they accept, unless they're complete nihilist, as to why they should or should not do certain things based on objective values, or at least based on the consequences. So if murder is wrong, the person might not care about going to jail. They might not care about this or that, but there'll be some kind of divine reaction for their crime, which they will care about. And so then you can have objective shoulds and shoulds nots on that basis. Of course, you get quite a lot of nuance and variety within morality. It's not that there's just some clear-cut. I mean, there's a few clear-cut things of right and wrong. Torturing babies is pretty clear-cut that that's wrong, but there's other areas where there might be multiple right answers and multiple right courses of action and so on. So there's a lot of nuance there. We don't want to I don't want to open myself up to any objections in that regard. And so with regard to TJump's morality, I can quickly list off a few objections, which is, so his system morality is based on the maximization of free will. We could call it desirism. So he thinks that a moral system which has that to reduce the amount of impositions and free will is the highest good, so to speak. But so you can call that. He can object if I'm getting this wrong when he replies. Hopefully I'm getting it right. So a system, so he has objective values at that level, but he doesn't have any shoulds or should nots, which is what I've heard him say elsewhere. He can correct me if I'm wrong. So I think in that sense, it's vacuous as a moral system. Unless you can tell somebody why they should or should not do actions based on them being right or wrong, I don't think you have a moral system at all. And then above, so at the middle level, you have objective values there. It's objectively valuable to allow people to express their free will on his system. But above the middle level, it's all nihilistic. So you could have a perfect match of sadists and masochists, and this would be a good and TJump system of morality, because the people who were being tortured had volunteered for it, and the people who were torturing weren't violating anyone's free will. And then, so generally when we think of morality, we think that there's some things that are objectively right and objectively wrong. So I think this nihilism, it doesn't account for or explain away our moral intuitions. So I think it fails in that regard. And TJump describes the greatest world imaginable as being one where we all live in some kind of simulated reality where we can do whatever we want. We can have anyone we want there or gone. And I don't think this really does describe the greatest possible reality. Generally, we want to have people who we're interacting with. We don't want to interact with simulations. You know, you want to marry a person and interact with the person. You want to have real children. You want to have real relationships. You don't want to have, you know, simulated aspects of your reality, because that's all you could get that were happy with your particular desires. And then if you are going to have people coming together, there's going to be conflicts of desire. So it's not possible. I know he's got answers for it not being possible, but I think the best possible world is in fact one where we are surrounded by other moral agents, but where those people are perfected in moral character. And this world as a place for perfecting us in moral character. And when we become qualified, we can go to that world, which is full of beings that are perfected in moral character. And that world is the best of all possible worlds, not one where people of shady moral character just get to have their own reality and, you know, be depraved in their own way. I'll leave it at that, and TJump can take over.
Thank you very much, Arjuna, for that opening statement. And I want to let you know a couple things, folks. Our guests are linked in the description, so if you'd like to hear more from them, you certainly can. And that includes if you are listening via the Modern Day Debate podcast, as we are now on podcast as well, if you haven't heard. And so we put our guest links in the description box of the podcast episode as well. And so with that, we'll kick it over to Tom for his opening statement. Thanks so much. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, so the topic today is which better explains morality, atheism or theism? And the answer is the same as for every other question of what explains something better, atheism or theism. The answer is always atheism, because the correct way to address any unknown is to take the unknown phenomenon, say, here's a phenomenon, and then try to make principles that describe the pattern in the phenomenon. And only then do you try and figure out what the ontology is of what is the cause of that phenomenon. Theists do it completely backwards. They just say, we don't know this, therefore God done it. God is the cause. I'm going to start with my God and then use that to explain everything else, which is starting with your conclusion and working backwards, which is exactly the wrong way to address any unknown. The correct way is to start with the phenomenon and describe the patterns in the phenomenon. The phenomenon of morality is feelings. We got these feelings that when James punches a baby, that is wrong, is immoral. He ought not to do that. So we feel that it's wrong. And these feelings are ultimately the thing we're trying to explain when we're trying to discover what morality is. So we have to start with the feelings. We have to describe a pattern in those feelings. Why did these actions feel wrong and immoral? Why do these actions feel right and moral? And why ought someone do this and ought not do that? Those are the starting point for describing an accurate model of morality. You have to start with the phenomenon, create a pattern in the phenomenon, and describe that pattern with the principle. And then only then can you try to infer what the ontology of that principle is. What is the cause or source of that principle? And again, theists are doing this backwards. They're just starting with their God. They have no principles. They're just saying, if my God does it, then it's good. And if my God doesn't do it, then it's bad. That's not a principle. It doesn't tell us anything about morality. And so it is not even a contender for a model of objective morality, which is why most philosophers who are moral realists and atheists completely reject the God hypothesis. The God model does not at all work for an objective basis of morality. And it's pretty easy to understand why. If you think of any moral situation, like the trolley problem, if you imagine there is an all-powerful being there, like at the trolley, and is it going to flip the switch or is it not going to flip the switch? We don't say something is moral because the being is going to do it. Like, it's not moral because the being does it. It's moral because, or the God does it because the action is moral. There is some set of criteria that this action adheres to that makes it the moral action, and that's why the being does it. So it's clearly not the case. We would never say that the only reason an action is objectively moral is because there's this all-powerful being who would do it in that situation. That tells us nothing about the principles of morality. That just tells us the location. You're saying objective morality is located in this being somewhere. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't tell us anything about the principles of morality. What we need to know is what principles describe the moral action so that we can know whether it's good or bad to flip the switch. And just saying whether or not the objective being does it is completely irrelevant. You're just, again, telling us the location. It's like me saying morality is located in this magical potato. Like, well, that's great, but that doesn't tell us anything about morality. So in order to count as a real philosophical basis of objective morality, you got to start with the principles. You got to tell us what the principles of morality are, and then infer what the ontology is, not the other way around. So that is the fundamental reason why theistic models completely fail, because they don't start with the evidence and work to a conclusion. They start with a conclusion and try to post hoc explain away the evidence. And I'll conclude there and go into the questions.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your opening statement. Want to let you know, folks, we are absolutely thrilled as next Friday, Dr. Boyce and Jonathan Sheffield will be debating Dr. Josh and Jim Majors on the Book of Daniel forgery or prophecy. You don't want to miss that, folks. It's going to be an epic one, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now and that notification bell as well, as it's going to be a great debate. We're excited for it. And with that, gentlemen, thanks so much. The floor is all yours for that open conversation.
I wanted to jump in with the ought thing that Arjuna brought up. So is something moral because you should not do it, or should you not do it because it is moral? You're muted.
Sorry, say that last bit again.
Is something moral because you should not do it, or should you not do it because it is moral?
Well, I'd say there's objective values, and those objective values are where we derive the oughts. So life is objectively valuable, therefore murder is bad.
So murder is bad. We can start with that. So murder is bad. Is murder bad because you should not do it? Is that what makes it bad, or should you not do it because it's bad for some independent set of criteria or reasons?
I'm sure I understand the question. Aren't those statements just saying the same thing in different ways?
No, it's like saying it's what makes it bad, what makes it immoral is simply the fact you should not do it. There's like a should not do it property in the action, and that's what makes it moral. Or is it immoral for some independent reason, and then because it's immoral for this independent reason, we then say we should not do it.
Oh, yeah. That one is immoral for an independent reason.
Right.
And
Fantastic.
should not do it is.
So
Yep.
that shows we don't actually need the oughts. So the oughts aren't in the morality. We apply the oughts. We say it's immoral for some reason, and then we say because it's immoral for this reason, we therefore should not do it. Now, I totally am fine with that. My model is totally fine with that, because my model is trying to describe what morality fundamentally is. And once you know what it is, once you know what those underlying properties are, then you can of course say, well, therefore, because it has these underlying properties, you ought not do it. But the whole point of my morality is that the oughts themselves are not in the morality. The first part, it's not the fact that you ought not do it that makes it moral.
Right, but you still need to be able to derive an ought. So how do you do that?
Just like how I just said. So if we know what the fundamental nature of morality is, which doesn't contain any oughts, then we can say, well, because this is the fundamental nature of morality, we therefore ought not do it.
Yeah, but so, I mean, you need to give a concrete example, because I could just say whatever value it is you use to derive a should, I could just say I don't accept that value.
I have no idea. So murder is wrong. We ought not murder.
Okay, murder is wrong, but what if I feel like murdering and I don't feel like it's wrong?
Then you would be incorrect.
So demonstrate that I'm incorrect.
I don't need to demonstrate you're incorrect. That's not part of the argument. So again, the argument is that oughts aren't in the morality. Oughts are something we humans apply to the morality. So if there's, like you said earlier, there is the reason something is immoral is not because we should not do it. We should not do it because there is some independent criterion of what morality is, right? You still agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the whole point of me saying there are no oughts is just the same exact point that I just made, is that the oughts aren't in morality. There isn't like an oughtness particle in morality. Oughtness is a property we apply to it. So we say there is something that is moral, whatever it is. We just assume there is an objective morality there.
Sorry,
Whatever that is.
A value.
What?
like a
It's fine.
value.
It can be, we can be a value would be one of the possibilities. So let's say values are what objective morality is. So there's a value there, value do not kill or whatever. Let's assume that's right for the sake of the argument. Then
Human life is valuable, therefore you should not kill.
Yeah, so we say something is valuable. Human life is valuable. That's the moral standard. That's all morality is. You need no oughts. There's no oughts in that statement. And then we come along and say, because human life is valuable, therefore we ought to value it. So the oughts aren't in the morality. You don't need the oughts at all for the morality. The morality is there completely independent of the oughts, right?
Yeah, so from the value, you move to the ought. That's fine. So the question is, what do you say to somebody who doesn't accept your values?
It doesn't matter. There's wrong, so that's irrelevant. So again, that doesn't matter to the point. So the point here is that
I can just say you're wrong about Krishna.
Okay, but that's we can get there. So one point at a time. So the point here is that the oughts are not in the morality. You do not need oughts anywhere for an objective morality, because you have the morality based off of some independent standards. And then we humans apply the ought statement. The ought statement is we ought to do it because it has this moral property in it. But the oughtness itself isn't in the morality.
It still needs to be able to be generated by the moral system.
What does?
The ought. You need to be able to arrive at oughts based on...
So if we have some metric that can determine what morality is, like my model says any involuntary position of will is immoral, so we can say, oh, that action has an involuntary position of will, it's immoral. And then we can do the same thing and say, oh, because it's immoral, we ought not do it. So any moral system can do that.
What if I like torturing people and I don't want to torture people
irrelevant
who want to be tortured?
So again, that's irrelevant to the question. We're going to assume my model's right. It's just objectively true. God ordained it. So God ordains it. We would say Vishnu ordains my model is correct. That's perfectly fine. Now we can know that it's immoral to involuntarily impose on wills. And there's no oughts in there, right? There's no oughts anywhere in that at all. We derive the oughts by saying, well, because it's moral for this independent standard, therefore we ought not do it. But the oughts aren't anywhere in the morality, right?
Well, they come out of it. I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs here. You're like, it's generated by the moral system, or it's innate to the moral system. It are kind of irrelevant. The point is, you need to be able to derive oughts.
In all the examples I listed, there was no oughts there. So we said, as you agreed before, something is moral not because we should not do it. We should not do it because it's moral based off of some independent standard, right? You still agree with that?
Yeah, that's fine. So, but then you have like human life is valuable. How do you get that? How do you know human life is valuable?
That's again separate question here. So separate question here. So the oughts are irrelevant. They do make no difference whatsoever to the model. If you have some objective moral value, human life is valuable or whatever, there's no ought anywhere in that. That's an objective moral value with no oughts, right? You then add the oughts later, but you don't need the oughts. That is itself the morality. Human life is valuable, full stop, right? There's no oughts in there, right?
I mean, it's kind of like saying if you need to buy groceries, you need to find a store that sells milk. It's like, well, a store that sells groceries may be out of stock of milk. It's like you can describe it in different ways. The moral system's going to give you oughts. But anyway, we can just move a step back and talk about objective values. So you need objective values, and we can forget about oughts. Objective values will give you oughts, and we can just talk about how do you get objective values.
Okay, so I mean that you're conceding the oughts aren't required, because that's kind of like the three of your major points.
Well, I can't. You still need to be able to get an ought.
I showed you can do that.
I showed by implementing the system. Yeah. So if you get
my argument is that oughts are not in morality. There's no more oughts anywhere in morality. You don't need oughts at all to describe objective morality. You can then, once you have objective morality, which doesn't require any oughts whatsoever, you can then get oughts from whatever that is. Anything you come up with, which objective morality, you can get an ought from that just by saying, because this is objective morality, we ought to do it. But the oughts themselves are irrelevant to the morality. You don't need the oughts for the morality.
I think we're just disagreeing in semantics in a sense. I mean, you need to be able to arrive at oughts, but you can arrive at oughts if you have a value. So let's just see if you can get values.
Well, you can arrive at oughts with anything, any objective moral fact. If it's values or cheese nuts, cheese pizza, whatever, you can still get an ought. You can say, this is objective morality, whatever it is, therefore we ought to do it. The oughts are irrelevant to the morality.
Anyway, if you have values, you can get oughts. So I was talking about it from oughts, and oughts is something you can get if you have values, but we can just as well talk about it based on being able to get values. So can we move on to values?
Okay, sure.
So how do you get values on your moral system?
I look at the
Objective.
evidence of moral intuition and moral progress, and I make a principle that describes the pattern in those things, and I say that principle is probably the moral value that is objective.
Moral progress is assuming that objective morality already exists.
No, it's a phenomenon that we observe and we feel. So we feel as if some societies, as they grow, become more moral, and we feel as if when James punches a baby, that's immoral. So these are not proofs of a morality. They're the evidence that we're using to try and build a hypothesis. They're not the proof.
Okay, so the data in a moral system is intuitions, moral intuitions. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And so a good moral system should be able to either account for our moral intuitions or explain them away.
Well, no, it should be based off of them. So that's like the only way we would ever know of morality is we have a feeling that we see some action and we see, oh, that feels like it's bad. So that is our evidence of morality. That's the thing we're trying to explain when we are talking about moral systems, whether it's subjective or objective. We have these feelings that action is wrong, and then we have to use those feelings to try and find a pattern in those feelings to make a principle that describes the pattern. That's how we try to discover morality.
That sounds like subjective morality.
No, so it doesn't tell us whether it's subjective or objective. It just says, here is what the word morality refers to, this phenomenon. We have a feeling, and whatever is causing that phenomenon, whether it's a god or an undiscovered law of nature or an abstract object or evolutionary subjective things, whatever is causing those feelings or whatever those feelings are referring to in reality, that's morality. So morality starts with epistemically. The only way we know about it is we have feelings that are about morality. We have a feeling that James punching a baby is immoral. That's a feeling we have. That's the only way we know about morality. So we have to start with that data to build a model.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree too much. You're just saying that the moral, yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
So you asked, how does my model get valued? Well, we start with the evidence, which is the phenomenon, and then we build a set of principles that seems to describe the pattern in the phenomenon.
But you're describing a pattern of the subjective opinions of humans. And if you're going to bring an evolutionary theory, then it'll just be whatever moral intuitions were favored survival. And it would be hard to call something like that moral because, what favored survival might be murdering people of another race so that your race has a survival advantage.
No, you're, again, just going about it backwards. Like the point here with any scientific model is you look at the patterns of the phenomenon and then you describe a principle. So when Newton described the patterns of the planets, he's obviously using observations, and maybe we're all in a matrix and so they're all wrong, but that doesn't matter because what we're doing is we start with the phenomenon, describe the pattern, and that's how you build evidence. The fact that we could be in the matrix or we could all be under a delusion doesn't change anything. You're using the exact same evidence. Like starting with your conclusion saying, it's a god tells us nothing. Like you can't do it that way. You have to start with the evidence, which is all of our evidence. Like if we all came about by evolution, then obviously all of our evidence is going to be caused from evolution. But you have to start with the exact same evidence we do and say, we have these feelings. That's all you got. There isn't any other line of evidence for morality.
Right. So, I mean, we can say that I said account for or explain away our moral intuitions. You're saying it's based on our moral intuitions. I don't think there's that much of a difference between those two statements. I mean, more or less.
The difference is what I said in the intro is that the secular models start with the evidence and then try to build a conclusion, whereas you start with your conclusion and try to fit the evidence.
Well, if you have an explanation or a worldview which is a perfect fit for the evidence, then what's wrong with that? You've just, sure, you've gone about it the other way around. You've taken an explanation and examined it based on the data to see whether it fits with experience and whatnot, versus trying to, come up with a theory from the ground up. You could go from the ground up and arrive at the same theory and have all the same reasons to believe it that you did if you started with that theory and then examined it, compared it against reality.
Well, if that was true, that would be good evidence. I just don't see how you could do that. So, but the difference is that there's infinitely many hypotheses that can post hoc explain the data. I recently posted several clips from Richard Feynman and other scientific YouTubers who explicitly said that in the philosophy of science, a theory that starts with the data and tries to like explain it from the data is always seen as better than one that can post hoc or accommodate past known data. So it's because of the problem of underdetermination. Every single infinitely many theories can post hoc explain all of the past data we don't know yet. So you can start with magical pineapple and it can explain the data with magical pineapple juices. But if a good theory is one that starts with the data and then tries to come up with a hypothesis from the data, not the other way around. So it's just inherently bad epistemology to start with your conclusion, because you're starting with your conclusion. You have to start with the evidence to lead to your conclusion. And you said that you could do this. You said that if you started with the evidence, it could lead to a conclusion. So I'm curious, how does the evidence of morality lead to the conclusion of Krishna or God or of any kind?
Well, we're talking about ascending versus descending knowledge here. So one example would be, if you can be given a password and you can determine if it's the correct password by typing it in and seeing if it grants you access. Alternatively, you could try to brute force or some other method hack the password, and you might get the password, but you might not. And so if you're given, a conclusion, you should, I don't see any problem. Supposing the conclusions that science has currently arrived at were just written in a book 2,000 years ago, and we dug it up and we're like, and instead of doing the inductive, ascending route of knowledge, we just read that book and they said, oh, look, there's all this scientific knowledge. Let's see if it's true. And we went and verified it all. Would that be any worse than if we had figured it out from the ground up without having found that book?
Well, if we just found a book that has predictions about what we're going to discover in 2,000 years, no rational person should believe it. It's just somebody made up a book. It would only be rational to believe after we confirmed it. That's the part that we're trying to figure out here. So if you have a book that says God is the magical source of morality, like, okay, what evidence indicates that? Why do you think it's a reasonable conclusion rather than just something somebody made up like magical potato or magical pineapple? Like that's the question I'm asking here, is that it seems to me all you've done is you've made up a hypothesis and then you are trying to get the evidence to fit your hypothesis. Whereas a reasonable hypothesis goes the other way around. So like in the case, if we dig up a book that says a bunch of stuff about 2,000 years from now, it's not reasonable to believe it until we can confirm the prediction. So what is this? How do we start with the evidence of our moral intuitions and say James punching a baby is wrong, and how does that lead to Krishna?
I mean, my example was more like, suppose we find a book that says here's how you build a combustion engine, and some dude found the book, took it, built a combustion engine, and now has a working motor vehicle. Or versus another guy who figured out all the physics from himself from the ground up without reading any books, built a combustion engine and built a motor vehicle. I don't see why there's any meaningful difference between the two. Both of them have managed to produce something and both of them have knowledge. I don't think it makes any difference that one of them received the knowledge versus one of them having figured it out on their own.
Yeah, I'm not understanding how you're building an engine in relation to morality. So the only building an engine we have is we observe moral stuff. So we observe someone killing someone for fun. We feel that's immoral. So where is this building the engine part of the analogy seems to make no sense.
Well, that was just to show that it doesn't matter whether the knowledge is ascending or descending. It just matters what's the reason for believing it.
Right. So, but the question, we've never actually had like descending knowledge that's actually been confirmed to be true outside of science books. So the question here is that why do you think that your descending knowledge is true rather than just a made up book like Harry Potter? That's the question here. Where is this knowledge it's given you that you've built an engine block? I see no moral engine block. I don't know what that even means. What is this?
Morality is a special field, so epistemology applies a little bit differently to morality because the data is purely epistemology. But there are cases of divine knowledge being revealed and then it being found to have scientific accuracies, such as the research work that Siddhartha has done to show that the Puranas, give accurate information of the age of the sun, the age of the universe, and the age of the universe, and specifically so on.
Just about morality. So forget all the other sciencey stuff.
Yeah,
because that's dubious and I reject it because we've already had debates on that. But let's say, what about morality? How does starting with our moral intuitions, because you agreed that the way we come to knowledge of morality is that we have these feelings about certain actions. How does any pattern in those feelings lead to Krishna? Or do you have to go to other fields because nothing in these patterns leads to Krishna?
Well, our discussion here is meta-ethics rather than ethics, and it's also which is it gives a better account for objective morality. So we're not really arguing whether or not God exists. We're just arguing if God did exist versus if atheism were true, which one would give a better account of objective morality. So I don't see how you can have objective morality on atheism. I think you can on theism. I don't need to prove that the reality we're living in is that one. As far as, how it comports with our moral intuitions, like you, for instance, say that it's immoral to impose on the free will of other living entities.
Wait, I forgot to clarify. There's no free will in my model. It's just will, no free will. Get rid of the free word. That was the thing I was cringing at the beginning.
Okay, right. So, well, that kind of, without free will, you kind of have to wonder what any of it means. And then, like, suppose you just had two sacks of chemicals that were functioning as electrical chemical machines. What would it mean to say one was imposing on the will of another?
A will is a specific combination of chemicals, and so if that specific combination of chemicals is being infringed upon to stop it, that would be an imposition of will. But that's a separate topic. So again, my original question is that when we're talking about what better accounts for morality, the best way to account for morality is to start with the evidence, build principles, then try to infer what it's made of. My model does that. Your model seems to do the opposite way. So how do you come to the conclusion that yours counts as a good explanation when none of the evidence seems to indicate your conclusion? Now, obviously, I'm not asking you to prove God exists. I don't care about that. I'm care about how does moral intuition or evidence of moral examples lead to a God? How does that indicate a God at all? Because it doesn't seem to indicate anything relating to a God whatsoever.
So our moral intuitions might not take us all the way through to, like a robust theism, but they at least get us to some kind of deism or maybe even Buddhism, where you have like naturalism isn't the case, and you have like something amounting to some kind of impersonal deity, which is the grounding of objective morality. So we have this idea that some things are objectively wrong, and like you can track moral disagreement and moral intuitions and try to give reductive explanations for all of them, but they all fail. Any kind of reductive explanation you can give for what our moral intuitions are based on, you can always give a counterexample which shows that it's not accurate. So it seems what's more accurate seems to be that our moral intuitions are based on what is the good or what is right or in our best interest and so on, rather than based on our desires.
You're losing me. So you said that morality can lead us to a deistic God. How?
So the fact that there, if it's the case that there's a such thing as the objective good or, things that are objectively bad, then we've got non-natural objective moral facts. And so there's a such thing as like an abstract good which exists. And, that's one feature which is ascribed to God. So we might only get that one feature and not the rest of the features of God, but you can't get that on physicalism.
I'm still lost here. So moral naturalism, Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy, you can have moral values objectively that are purely natural. So there's no requirement for a supernatural. Secondly, Platonic objects, you can have abstract objects that don't entail a God. So both of those things you can have without any reference to a God. So I'm not sure how does any of that
the
lead to
idea
a
of a
deistic God?
circle and the idea that human life is intrinsically valuable are two very different things.
Platonic objects, just Google Platonic objects. So the point here is that, no, I don't agree with the Platonic objects model. The point is that you don't need a God for the Platonic abstract objects, including moral ones, which again, Plato, Platonic objects, he did say the good was a Platonic object. And you don't need a non-natural thing for objective moral values. That's again, part of just moral naturalism, Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy. So neither of those things seem to indicate a God, or why do you think they indicate a God?
I mean, like they philosophers can say that, but I'd like to see their justification for it. And again, I was saying it might not get you to full theism, but
what are the issues you think that exist with that? Why would that be different from being grounded in a God? Like where is the issue here?
Well, like how can life be objectively valuable unless that's grounded in some abstract good? And that can't exist on physicalism. On physicalism, you've just got chemicals and atoms. And
there could be a law of nature that's the moral law of nature. That would be perfectly fine.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, how would that be a natural law?
It's exactly the same way it would be a part of a God's nature. It could just be a part of nature's nature.
Well, I mean, I think you're just, it's definitely not physicalism. And then we're just distorting the definition of naturalism to include all these abstract things, which is...
Oh, no, I didn't say anything about abstract. I said like a law. It's like gravity. So it's a field, essentially. And I'm saying that it's a part of the universe, as in it's a fundamental aspect of the universe's nature, just like you believe that morality is a fundamental aspect of Krishna's nature.
So what kind of a law is it? I mean, laws of physics generally describe the way matter behaves. What does this law describe?
Morality, it's the moral law. So it's an undiscovered law of nature. There could be more that we haven't discovered yet.
Yeah, but I mean, laws of physics are things that describe the behavior of particles. I mean,
the known laws of physics, but I'm saying there could be more that we haven't discovered yet. So I'm saying, why would it be more reasonable to say that there is this nature or property of a God than to say that the same kind of nature or property exists in nature? Like, what's the difference?
Again, I don't understand how it would make any sense to call this a law of physics. Like, I mean, you're saying there might be laws of physics that don't describe the way matter behaves. But wouldn't they be categorically different from laws of physics such that they wouldn't deserve the same name?
Laws of physics do not just mean move matter and motion. There's laws of physics that apply to quantum fields and lots of things that have nothing to do with matter. So you're just incorrect about how the laws of physics work. And also the laws of physics only describe the known laws. They're not fully exhaustive. Like, we could discover other kinds of laws of physics that have nothing to do with the current laws of physics. There's no limitation in physics that says, well, any other laws just can't, we'd have to call them something differently. Like, no one in physics says that. So my question here is that, why do you think that this moral property could be a property of a God's nature? And how is that any different from the property being a part of the fundamental nature of reality without a God? What is the difference there? Forget physics. Physics doesn't matter here. Physics is just science.
I mean, you're claiming it can be a part of physics. You want to call it nature. A law of physics. That's why it matters. Or
a law of physics, again, is just a scientific epistemology term. It doesn't change the ontology one bit. So again, what is the difference between the ontology of morality being grounded in the being of a God versus the being of nature?
I think that, I mean, the word nature or naturalism is used in philosophy has too broad a meaning to be precise. So if you want to say nature, I mean, I've had people I was debating say that if God existed, God would be natural. And the word that can be stretched to mean that is pretty vacuous. So
okay, so what I mean by natural is unguided forces that don't have a mind. So yours has a mind, mine has no mind.
Unguided forces that don't have a mind, right? I mean, that's a reasonable definition. It's definitely not a physicalist account. We're definitely getting into something, at least along the lines of Buddhism here, where we've got objective goods existing separately and so on.
No, this is purely a part of physicalism. It's called moral naturalism, which is a kind of physicalism. So,
but I mean, then on physicalism, you've just got particles interacting. How does that give you? How is there a right way for particles to interact and a wrong way for particles to interact?
Because there's a moral law that governs right and wrong, and it's there. It's a field, so it's not exactly just particles. Particles are not fundamental. Fields are fundamental. So there is a moral field that exists, just like the Higgs field exists. So how is this any different from saying that there is this moral property intrinsic to a field is different from saying there's this moral property intrinsic to a being, a God? Where is the difference?
Just saying it exists doesn't solve the problem. I mean, how can there be a wrong way for particles to exist? There has to be properties intrinsic to humans that make them valuable. And so you need to have something more than just physics to account for that.
No, the properties in humans could be a way that it interacts with the field, just like how particles are a result of the fields interacting. So I'm not hearing you answer the question. What is the difference between morality existing fundamentally to a non-conscious nature and a conscious being?
I mean, you're basically just trying to describe like morality existing in the vacuum. You're just trying to like cut off one of God's properties and have it existing in a vacuum and saying, look, we can have this feature without having theism.
Yes.
And you can't describe how it could have anything to do with physicalism. So you're kind of creating a no man's land.
No, because physicalism doesn't have any limitations. Like there's no thing that we couldn't discover in the future that could potentially be physical. So you're applying these arbitrary limitations on physicalism to mean the stuff we have now and nothing more than that. Like it's not how science works. So yes, you were right in the first thing you said, that I'm taking the properties of God, removing one, the consciousness one, and saying, oh, we can still have all those properties like the moral one without the consciousness. Therefore, we don't need the God because God entails the consciousness.
I mean, just saying we could discover it in the future, I mean, that's nice. Maybe we'll discover it in the future, but currently it's just a theory, right? Or a hypothesis.
Right. So that's the same between the God and my alternative. So what's the difference between the God and my alternative?
Well, I'm glad you appreciate the similarity, because I was going to say that to you. I wish Ram had said that when you had a debate on my channel with him on that, because he was pushing you on, where's the evidence why I should accept it? And you were like, it's a hypothesis. It doesn't need to have evidence. And I was thinking, he just needs to ask, like, if it's just a hypothesis, how is it any better than anyone else's religious beliefs? So it seems like you accept that point.
Well, so again, my argument here is that we're taking your hypothesis, removing one of the properties and saying, we can still have the morality without that property. Therefore, God is not required for morality because we can have morality without the consciousness. So obviously you don't need the God. That's the whole point of the argument here. Now, the reason mine's better is because I start with the evidence to lead to a conclusion, whereas you start with the conclusion and try to fit the evidence. So that's why mine's better.
How does the evidence get you there?
Get me where?
How do you get there from evidence? How do you get from observing the world to this thing called morality exists as a law of physics objectively outside of what we think of it?
That's not the conclusion I argued for in the intro. That's an alternative to theism. So the whole point of that argument is to show here is one way that we could have morality without the God. That's the only point there. That's not the conclusion of my moral hypothesis. That's just a possibility. So the whole point of that argument is to show that you don't need the God for morality. Here is one logically possible way to have morality without the God. Remove the consciousness.
Yeah, but how are you getting there from the evidence? I mean, you just said that it was a...
I'm not. I'm starting with your hypothesis. I'm saying you say that in order to have morality, you need a God. I say, no, you don't. Here's why. We can take your God, remove a property, and still have the morality. So this has nothing to do with the evidence of morality. This is simply to demonstrate you don't need a God for morality, because that was your whole argument, is that you need a God for morality.
I don't think it makes any sense to say objective moral laws could exist independent of a mind. Like, values are something that exists in a mind. So how can there be values existing separate from a mind?
Values can be something we impose on stuff. So that's
just subjective morality. You're trying to defend objective morality.
Yeah, so there could be an objective moral property, and then we call it valuable.
But like, say, human life is objectively valuable. A value is something that exists in a mind. And so these are objective things that exist.
So no, like there could be a property of morality, like a moral particle, and humans have this particle within them, and then we recognize that particle and say, humans are objectively valuable because they have this particle in them, the moral particle. So you can have a moral particle that exists within people, and then we recognize that and call it valuable. The value itself doesn't exist.
That's definitely not physicalism. You're talking, values are metaphysics.
It's not the point. So again, this isn't about physicalism. This is the whole point here, is to show your argument, which you said, it doesn't make sense to have morality without a mind. The whole point here is to show that, yes, it does. You can have morality, which is a particle, and then minds who have values can recognize that particle.
You're just taking morality and calling it a particle that doesn't really do anything. Like, I could call myself a unicorn.
You're just taking morality and calling it Krishna or Vishnu. So what's the difference?
Yeah, but
the whole point. What's the difference?
Vishnu is an account of morality which gives full explanatory power, and you can even arrive at categorical.
Where's the difference in the explanatory power between these two hypotheses?
Well, for one thing, you can say, why is life objectively valuable? You can say because the creator, who's the ground of all good, thinks that it's objectively valuable. And that's personified goodness. That's what he thinks. Therefore, that's the case.
Subjective by definition, but let's suppose that worked in some crazy way.
It's not subjective when you're talking about God, because God is the ground of reality.
Is it God's opinion?
Opinion is a bit of a misnomer. God and the good are identical, so it's not that God opinions, are subject to whimsical changes. They
the changes don't matter.
Identical with the good.
Is something good simply because God believes it's good, or does God believe it's good because it's good based off of some independent standard?
God is the personification of the good. They're identical. So
it doesn't mean anything. So is something good simply because he believes it, or does he believe it because it's good based off of some metric that he's using to assess its goodness?
Something is good because it's good, and God's opinions converge with the good because God is the personification of the good.
So that doesn't make any sense. Something is good because it's good. Like, it's superb. So again, the question is something good because God believes it and no other reason than just because God believes it? Or does the God believe it's good because it's good based off of some independent metric that we assess?
There's another issue with that question, is it misses the panentheism that you find in the Hare Krishna tradition, which is that nothing exists separate from God. So it's not like the goodness of something is something separate from God, which God then either has an opinion on, which converges with, or which his opinion determines.
It doesn't matter if there's, so I'm not saying there's other stuff other than God. So even if God is the only thing that exists, there's different parts of God. You have God's opinion, and then you have like God's feelings, and then you have God's pinky toe. There's different parts of God. So the question is it only moral because of God's opinion? Like God's opinion is what makes it moral, or is it moral because there's like some part intrinsic to God's nature or whatever, and the goodness adheres to that part of God's nature, and then God's opinion then fits his nature, but his opinion isn't the reason it's good. It's his nature is the reason it's good.
I think you're just misunderstanding the identical relationship between God and the good. I mean, sure, you can say God has a hand and God has a pinky and these things are different, but there's a meaningful sense in which they're connected.
Right. I just said that God's nature is why it's good. So I was literally saying this part of God is what makes it good, not his opinions. Is it his opinions, or is it the other parts of him that are not his opinions?
I mean, you could say there's a third thing, which is the good, and then the goodness of that object and God's opinion could both converge on that good.
Okay. So the options here are God's opinion or anything other than God's opinion, which includes parts of God or parts of the thing. Those are the two options. God's opinion, not God's opinion.
It's not possible for a perfect being to have an opinion which diverges from the good. So the question is incoherent.
So I'm asking chicken or the egg, which comes first? Does the opinion come first, or does the good come first?
They're identical. When it gets down to God's being, they're the same thing.
So is God's being God's opinion?
I mean, opinion's probably a misnomer when it comes to God. God is like categorically different from us.
Or a judgment about something. So you said.
Sorry?
An opinion is a view or judgment about something. You said that God views human life as intrinsically valuable, something like that.
Well,
right?
I mean, we have an opinion, which means I have an idea which is it could possibly be wrong. God doesn't have ideas that could possibly be wrong.
There's no part in this definition that says possibly wrong. So view or judgment.
I'm saying why the word opinion is misleading, because we use it in a particular way.
A view or judgment. A view or judgment. So I have a judgment that human life is valuable. Like if I'm a God, it can't be wrong. It's still an opinion. So or it's a judgment statement. So it's fine. Doesn't the truth amountness doesn't change the fact that it's an opinion. The question is something good because God views it that way, or is it good because it like coheres to his nature, and then that's why he views it that way?
I mean, the goodness comes from the groundedness of goodness. If you wanted to talk about ontological priorness, then you could say the goodness and grounded in the nature,
so I agree
which
with
is also grounded in God, is where the goodness comes from.
Say that again. You said the goodness is grounded in something.
Then the goodness of a thing is grounded in the goodness, and the goodness is part of God's being.
Yeah. So is the goodness a part of his opinion, or is the goodness a part of some more fundamental part of him?
Again, I think the opinion thing's misleading. You could
so you're
say
saying
the opinion comes second.
It is not a part of his opinion, correct?
I suppose you could say that.
Okay, that's the whole point, is that his opinion, his view doesn't make a difference. His view that human lives are intrinsically valuable is because there is some objective moral good either in the humans or in God's nature or something, and he has a view that sees this, but it's not the view itself that causes this, right?
I mean, my understanding of theism is that, the goodness doesn't change over time. So you could say it's necessary that what is good is good. So
I didn't say
therefore,
anything about changing.
you could say
So
the
I'm
opinion
asking
doesn't
the
change
cause.
and the object doesn't change.
I don't
And
care
the
if
goodness of the
opinion
object
changes.
doesn't change.
I don't care. So I'm asking, is it good because of the view God has? Is it the view God has that makes it good? Or is it some other part of God's nature that adheres, that is like the fundamental nature of goodness, and it happens to be alike this fundamental nature of goodness? Is it his view itself that makes it good?
Yeah, I guess it would be that one.
Which one?
Sorry, you said two. Yeah, I mean, it's the goodness. Yeah, something being good is because it's grounded in the goodness, and God's opinion confers with the good because it's grounded in the goodness. We can put it that way. So the goodness.
Yes, perfect. So that means that it's not the view, it's not his opinion that makes it good. His opinion is just reflecting the fact that it's good, which is grounded in himself or something.
Okay.
So that means that it's since you don't require the opinion part, you don't require the consciousness part, then you don't need the God for the morality. You can just get rid of the consciousness part altogether. The view, you just get rid of it.
It's still grounded in God's existence. I don't see how you could get it any other way. I mean, otherwise you've just got physical particles smashing in the void.
Remember, so I took your God, I removed the consciousness and said you could have morality without this. And then you said it's incoherent to say you could have morality without a mind because it's his view of goodness that gives it meaning or whatever. And then you agreed, oh, no, it's not the view. It's actually some fundamental part of his nature. And you don't need the views. So that would lead back into my argument. Okay, so we can have the objective morality grounded in some nature of some kind without consciousness. The view part doesn't really do anything or add anything to the hypothesis. You can still have morality without that, leading to the conclusion you don't need the conscious agent for morality.
So how do you arrive at what the good is on your view? How do you know what the good is? How do you even know that the good exists?
We look at the evidence and then try to make a principle that describes the evidence, just like we do with science.
Okay, so can you flesh that out?
We look at moral examples like it's wrong to punch babies, it's wrong to steal, it's wrong to murder, etc. And we create a principle that describes the pattern in those feelings. And I think it's in the involuntary imposition of will is wrong. I think that is the accurate description of the pattern, just like Einstein described the pattern F equals ma and or E equals mc squared. So we found a pattern of the phenomenon. We described the pattern with a principle.
But what about people who think like it's okay to rape and torture?
There are people who think the world is flat. Why do I care?
Well, I mean, your whole epistemology is simply based on people's subjective opinions on moral subject matters. So
yes, everyone has a subjective experience, like that the planets move around the Earth, and then we try to describe that subjective experience with principles, and then we apply those principles to future subjective experience to see if they can agree. That's how all evidence in science works.
I mean, how do you know that you don't have anything more than just a bunch of subjective data that describes a pattern, which is how things have happened to happen when you were observing them?
It's like asking, how do we know we're not in the matrix? We can't know with certainty. It's just a predictive hypothesis. So my inclination is that the reason morality is objective is because it's probably going to apply to all life forms all across the universe. They're all going to build some kind of a model of morality independent of evolution, like artificial intelligence are probably going to describe or come up with a model of morality. And they're all going to converge on a single model of morality. I think that all the different models, all develop throughout the universe are all going to converge on a single model, just like they are for scientific facts. And so that is why I believe morality is objective.
I mean, the fact that you take a bunch of subjective opinions and combine them together, I don't see why you should think you have anything objective. We're not talking about gravity here. It's not something you can go out and repeat and measure. You're just talking about, oh, I feel like this is wrong, or I feel like this is right. It's a very different thing from being able to...
Those are the same. So I have a subjective experience that I see the planets going around the sun. I literally all experience is subjective experience. And then we try to take that experience and map it onto a principle and see if that principle can describe future experience before we know it. So all science is based on subjective experience that's then put into principles that can try to predict future experience of everybody else and yourself. So we're doing the same thing with morality. We're saying we have this subjective experience that punching babies is wrong. Just like we have this subjective experience that the Earth is going around the sun or whatever. And then we try to make a model to describe what this subjective experience refers to, like an equation or whatever. And then we take that equation and apply it to future experience. Like if this equation is right, then here's the future kind of experience we would expect to have, or that we would expect to see in other species who have the same kinds of sensations. We would expect that if they're looking at the planet, they would also be able to accurately calculate their subjective experience of the motion of the planets with this equation. And we're doing the same thing with morality. So we're saying that if this moral principles that we're describing, that we're using to describe our moral experience is correct, then we can infer that other species all across the universe would be able to come to the same conclusion, just like they would about orbits of the sun.
So, sorry, you're just talking about like something that every government, around the world has figured out, like the freedom to the pursuit of happiness and the Constitution of America and so on, that the basic right to liberties and so on is something governments all over the world. And you're just adding one thing to it, that it describes an objective moral law. I don't see how that's justified, and I don't see how it's anything other than taking something other people have figured out and then just claiming that it's a law of physics.
If all of the independent species all across the universe all came to the same conclusion, that would be pretty good evidence. So it's not just the governments.
Well, I mean, you'd have to explain how, like with the gravity example, you can make predictions based on that. You can go and observe it and see it happening. With I feel like murder's wrong. All you ever have is a feeling that murder's wrong. You can't go and be like, well, if murder were wrong, then if you kill somebody, they die. It's like, well, if murder were not wrong, if you killed somebody, they die, That the phenomenology is identical in both cases. So I don't see how you can.
Well, one, yours can't make any predictions
law.
Either, so that's irrelevant. Secondly, I can make predictions. I actually do. I say, here's how moral intuition is going to change over time across different areas with resources, across different species. Here's how you can predict how it's going to change. So you can make predictions using it. But saying that you can't doesn't help your case, because yours doesn't either. So that still doesn't show that mine is not better than yours. So I can just say, yeah, sure, mine doesn't make predictions, but neither is yours, so mine's still better than yours.
Well, I mean, a prediction of mine would be that by following, say the process of Krishna consciousness, you would develop a moral character, which is something that's widely observed. So many people, get annoyed when their child becomes a Hare Krishna, and then they give up drugs and, start waking up early and living a clean, pure life. And they start thinking that it wasn't not such a bad thing after all.
So that doesn't work, because you're using your conclusion as the measuring stick for your conclusion. So you're saying that, well, if you follow Hare Krishna consciousness, your morality, your moral nature will improve. Well, how do you measure your moral nature? Well, we see if it fits the Hare Krishna consciousness. So it's kind of like the same thing you've been saying to me the entire time. Well, how do you observe a moral nature? How do you measure a moral nature independent of Hare Krishna?
No, it improves based on objective things that other people agree on. Like the parents who are not Hare Krishnas think, oh, my child's actually a better person after becoming a Hare Krishna than they were when they were just, some deadbeat teenager.
So a bunch of subjective inclinations that I think they're a better person. That's
all you're offering.
Yes, that's kind of the point. So your objection here doesn't apply, because it's the exact same thing for both models. We're using our subjective experience to try and measure this stuff. That's all we got.
You said about predictions, and I said we can make predictions. What's your predictions? I can't, I've heard you say about aliens. I don't see how that would be valuable, because, if we got the subjective opinions of, not that many people agree that objective morality is some law of physics grounded in naturalism. So you don't even have many humans agreeing with you. And then you think maybe aliens are going to come along and we'll find some who agree.
So I said the conclusion, the model itself would be it. The grounded in nationalism part is a different hypothesis there. So that's separate. Again, that's the alternative to theism thing, just to show that you don't need a God. So those are two different hypotheses they brought forward. The point here is that you don't, like, everything that your model does and uses, mine does. So my predictions are actually better than your predictions. My predictions are that eventually we'll see rocks as falling on people as immoral in however many hundreds of thousands of years or whatever. So mine makes real predictions about changes in the future that we don't know yet, whereas yours is just predicting that if you adopt this lifestyle, people will see you as morally better, I guess. Which, I mean, I don't think that's true, probably provably false in many cases, but my prediction is still better than yours. And again, we're starting with the same evidence of I have a subjective experience of feels of that this is immoral, and we're trying to, at least mine tries to build a model off of that, whereas you're, again, reverse engineering that, and nothing leads to Hare Krishna from the evidence we have. You're just starting with your conclusion and working backwards.
Well, the morality explained in Bhagavad Gita does fit with our intuitions in large part. So it does fit the data in that sense.
Anything can fit the data if you post hoc explain everything. That's not evidence.
Well, I gave the example of finding a book that tells, that's 2,000 years old, which tells you how to build a motor vehicle.
Yeah, and I asked,
I
what is
don't
the
think
motor
it really
vehicle?
matters.
Where
No,
is the
but that
motor vehicle in
example
this
just
analogy?
shows that it doesn't matter whether you have top-down or bottom-up knowledge, as long as you've got knowledge.
Right, but to know its knowledge, you have to actually build the vehicle. That's the problem. You haven't done that with the moral case. You just asserted you have a book that says, here's how to build a pink tower, but you've never built a pink tower. So you don't have knowledge. You just have a book that says you could do it. You have to actually do it to show the book is right. That's the part that we're missing.
There's thousands of people all through history who've improved their moral character by following religious traditions.
And by taking marijuana. That's not evidence that marijuana is key to the universe. So that it doesn't help your case. The question here is that my model starts with the evidence, tries to build a conclusion based off of the evidence. Your model starts with a conclusion. And you're saying that, well, if we discovered a book that could do something or teach us how to do something, that would be evidence that the book is right. Sure, I'm happy to do that. What does this book teach us how to do? And your only evidence is that some people had their lives improved. Well, I mean, some people have had their lives improved by literally everything. Anything that they could do has improved somebody's life somewhere. Self-injury has improved somebody's life somewhere. Drugs have improved lots of people's lives. This is not evidence. This is a common feature of human nature. Like, it's predicting the sun will rise tomorrow. It's not a prediction.
So what I'm defending is meta-ethics, that the ontology of theism gives a better account for the existence of objective morals. So I don't need to get into the specifics of the ethics of the Hare Krishna tradition or any other tradition.
So my argument is that anybody can make up an account. Making up an account isn't evidence. So that doesn't help your case.
But it provides a better ontological basis. For example, you can get categorical imperatives based on having which you can't get on your model, because you can have a deity who issues karmic reactions for actions we perform, such that even if you don't care about murder, you're going to care about being murdered yourself in a future birth. Therefore, you can say you shouldn't do bad actions because you'll get bad karma, and there's karmic reactions for any given activity that any sane person will not want to have. So you've got the ontology of it.
Anything. So mind can have categorical imperatives. I've literally explained how mind does that in the first beginning.
I haven't understood how that could be the case.
You've just asserted that yours can't, and I'm asking, well, why is yours any different from mine?
So how can yours have categorical imperatives?
We know what the objective moral thing is. Like, if there's a moral particle, and then we can say, we ought not do that. That's how you discover whatever objective morality is, and then say the word, I ought not do that.
Yeah, but say you're telling me I shouldn't torture people. It's like, yeah, but I enjoy torturing people and I want to do it.
It doesn't matter. Like, if there is an objective fact of the matter that this particle is the moral particle, and we can know for a fact that this action has this particle, then it is a fact that is the moral thing, and your opinion doesn't matter. No, so whatever objective morality is, if there is one, it is factually the case that this is moral and this is not moral, and then we can just factually say this we ought do and this we not ought do, because there is the fact of the universe.
You need a value to get an ought, and if I don't accept the values which entail that ought, then there's nothing you can say to me.
The values are, again, irrelevant. Like, if I can say there is a fact of the matter, this is the moral thing, then I may have the value I ought not do it, but it's irrelevant. It's still a fact that this is the moral thing, regardless of whether or not I have the value I ought not or ought to do it. It's irrelevant. If I have the value I ought to do this immoral thing, that doesn't change the fact of the matter. It's still the immoral thing to do. So the fact of the matter is true independent of any values or oughts at all. That was kind of the point of the whole first. Is something good because we ought do it, or do we do it because it's moral? The whole point of that analogy is to show the oughts don't make any difference to the morality whatsoever. It's just a descriptive term we apply to the morality.
Yeah, again, I'm not seeing how that works, because you went through that thing with opinions, but the idea of a circle is one thing, but a value is a very different thing. I still don't see how that can exist independent of a mind. You're saying, it's true whether or not you appreciate it. But if I don't appreciate the value, then there's no way to give me an imperative. You can't say I shouldn't murder if I don't appreciate any of the values which entail murdering to be bad.
No, I can say you shouldn't murder regardless of what you believe. Like, your beliefs are irrelevant. They make no difference. So morality could be a particle. So there's no values, no oughts. You don't need any values or oughts for morality. We can then apply values and oughts to whatever is moral. So morality is this particle. This particle is the moral particle. If you don't do it, you're immoral. It's a fact of the universe. And then you may or may not have the value you ought to do it. It's irrelevant. Your values are irrelevant.
What if I like being immoral and I think being immoral is a good thing to do?
Your values are irrelevant, just like I just said. It is the fact that this is moral, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you value it or not. This is the fact. That's what objective morality means. Objective facts means it is the case regardless of any of your subjective values or opinions.
Yeah, but this fails because you've got nothing to say to people who don't accept your system other than, well, it's true even if you don't accept it. Like
objective literally means it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what your values are.
You don't have categorical imperatives, and you've still only got hypothetical imperatives. This is true, and if you appreciate the truth of it, then you should act accordingly.
So again, what objective facts mean is that it doesn't matter what your values are. It doesn't matter what you ought to do. It doesn't matter what you believe you ought to do. Your beliefs, your values are irrelevant. That's what objective facts mean. So if there's an objective morality, it literally means it doesn't matter what you ought or what you believe you ought to do or what you value. It's irrelevant. So your subjective values make no difference to the objective facts.
Well, I mean, trying to say I should or should not do something, it kind of does matter what I think.
No, it doesn't. That's literally what the word objective means. Objective truth means your subjective values do not matter. So I don't care if you subjectively value it. It's irrelevant to objective truth. You could subjectively believe the world is flat. You are objectively wrong. Same with morality. There's no difference.
I mean, how do you get a should out of it then? If
you don't need to. I just said this like 6 times. Objective means not subjective. So your subjective values of what you think you should do make no difference, ever.
Yeah, but then how do I know it's not just your opinion versus my opinion?
You don't need to know. Knowledge, epistemology is irrelevant to the ontology of the fact of the matter. If it's ontologically a fact that this is moral, what you know or believe, your subjective epistemology, your subjective values do not make any difference.
Okay, but how is it any different from just talking about pink unicorns? It's like neither of us accept that pink unicorns exist, but you know, they might still exist and our epistemology just be off. So similarly, we might all think murder is not wrong, even though it's wrong. But how does it mean anything to us unless we have some way of grounding that, you know, in our understanding or
right? We need evidence, and our evidence is that we feel these things are wrong, and then we try to build models based off of those evidences, just like we do with anything in science.
Right, and then onto the free will thing. So you think, will is the primary principle, but I don't think that comports with our moral intuitions because, you know, I might, you know, I've got small children, and you know, sometimes small children want to do things like eat cookies for dinner while playing with a knife and climbing a ladder. And I need to impose on the free will of my 2-year-old to prevent them from doing that so they don't get malnourished and potentially badly injure themselves. And generally, when we think of a good parent, we understand that they do some imposition of free will. We don't think, oh, they're immoral, but they're only a little bit immoral because they've taken the least immoral of the available options. We think we commend good parents who raise their children well, and we fully understand that they've imposed on their children's free will in order to raise them well. So basing it on the imposition of will seems like a really weird way of stating it, when really what's going on is we've got, you know, a more intuitive explanation would be duties and obligations and objective goods and bads. So parents have a duty to raise their children well, and there's certain ways you can achieve that, and obligations parents have. And if they fulfill those obligations, we consider them to be good parents. So I think duty-based morality better explains moral ontology.
So yeah, no, the only reason it's justified to stop your kids from playing with knives and eating cookies is because of the malnourishment and the stabby part that you mentioned. If we could solve those problems of saying that, like, give someone nanobots so they could have food process exactly what they need in their body and dispose of everything else, there would be no justification for stopping your kids of eating chocolate chip cookies. It would be immoral to stop them from eating chocolate chip cookies because they should be able to enjoy as much chocolate chip cookies as they want, as long as you can have some nanobots to make sure they're not malnourished. Same thing with knives. If everyone has a personal force field, there's no reason to stop people from running around with knives because they can't stab anybody with them. So again, the only reason it's justified to stop people from eating cookies or run around with knives is your subjective limitations that you can't prevent the consequences because you don't have the power to do so. But if you were objectively able to prevent the consequences, then the objectively moral thing to do would not be to stop them from eating cookies or to stop them from running with knives. So the only reasons those are justified in your context is because you used a subjective limitation. You used a subjective limitation of humans that they are subjectively unable to prevent malnourishment and stabbing with their power. And so contrasting our subjective limitations when trying to describe an objective morality is a clear self-contradiction. If we want to know what objective morality is, we'd have to compare what we should do for any being of any level of power in that situation. So if there is an all-powerful being in that situation, should he let the kids eat chocolate chip cookies? Yes, he should let them eat as many chocolate chip cookies as they want and just give them some kind of non-malnourished nanobots or whatever. That would be the moral thing to do. It would not be moral for the all-powerful being to stop them from eating chocolate chip cookies and to stop them from being able to enjoy life, simply because it doesn't care enough to prevent them from being malnourished. Same with running with knives. So your example fails because you're applying subjective limitations to an objective model of morality, which would apply to all possible beings, not just humans. And in my model, what you do is you start with this objective standard of what an all-powerful being would, the standard an all-powerful being would be measured against, and then apply our subjective limitations. So you'd say, because we are not all-powerful beings, we cannot give you anti-malnourishment nanobots. Therefore, we have to stop you from eating chocolate chip cookies because we don't have the power to do otherwise. So it's a justified immoral action because you don't have all power to be able to allow them to eat cookies. But the moral thing to do would be to let them eat cookies and prevent their malnourishment.
So the only way to have a perfectly moral human being would be for them to have superpowers where they could make imaginary force fields and, you know, change the laws of physics and all sorts of things.
Yes, a perfectly moral being would be one who could do the most moral thing in every case. Humans cannot do that. So there are no perfectly moral human beings.
I don't think that fits with our moral intuitions. Generally, we think of being moral as, you know, doing the best thing given what you had. We don't think of moral as having superhuman abilities to deliver what everybody wants all the time. You know, that would come under a different category, not necessarily morality.
Well, I definitely know it's the majority religion view. Like Christianity has that view that all of us fall short of the glory of God, that they have the same view of morality, that we aren't able to achieve perfectly moral systems.
Like, you know, if my bank account's empty and I don't give any money in charity, that's not immoral of me. But, you know, if I've got billions of dollars and I don't give any charity away, we could consider that immoral.
Well, I definitely would not. But the point here is that, yes, most religious people, or the biggest religious people, do agree that morality is unobtainable. A perfect morality is unobtainable for humans. So that's not an uncommon view. The second thing is that if you're trying to say that morality is objective and not subjective, well, then you need to acknowledge that our subjective limitations, or that objective morality is not going to be based on our subjective limitations. Objective morality is going to be based on what would be applied to all beings, not just our subjective limitations. So obviously, most people's moral intuitions are that morality is subjective and evolutionary in this case, because it's anthropocentric, designed to be around human limitations, which I think is wrong. I think objective morality has nothing to do with human limitations. That's subjective morality. I mean, I agree that, yeah, if you're basing morality on our subjective limitations, that's not objective. So when I want an objective morality, what I'm trying to do is I need to filter out those subjective limitations and see, well, what would be the objective moral standard that would apply to all possible beings, not just humans, because clearly it doesn't make any sense to try and base an objective morality off of subjective human limitations.
I think it doesn't make any sense to call our limitations subjective. That our limitations exist objectively. It's an objective fact that if my children eat nothing but cookies, they'll get sick.
So a paraplegic, let's say there's Stephen Hawking. He has limitations. He can't move his arms or legs. Are those objective limitations that apply to everyone, or are they subjective limitations that only apply to him?
Well, sure, they only apply to him, but it's an objective fact that he has those limitations.
Right, but they're his subjective limitations. So we obviously, if we're trying to make an objective morality that applies to all beings, we wouldn't say, well, Stephen Hawking's personal subjective limitations are this, and we're going to base the objective morality on that. Like, no, we would say that that's just his subjective limitations. We want a model that applies to all beings, right? We wouldn't try to base objective morality on Stephen Hawking, right?
Well, you just add in the principle of based on, you know, the options available based on the circumstances. So, you know, it's not immoral for me to have no money in my bank account. What's immoral is if I have lots of money and I only use it for selfish purposes.
Right. So you would filter out the subjective limitations and you would apply an objective standard. So that's the whole point, is that you would take the subjective limitations and you say, okay, so we need to filter these out somehow. You would say, do this, maximize this to the best of your means or whatever. And so to the best of your means, what it does is that it filters out all of the subjective limitations and says there is this objective standard here. And then once we know that objective standard, we can apply your limitations and know the closest you can get to it is this, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I just think it's more accurately described as duties. So like a police officer has a duty to treat criminals differently than they treat normal, like law-abiding citizens, but a doctor has an obligation to provide medical care to everybody regardless of their criminal background.
What?
So I think obligations and duties based on, you know, somebody's position in society, skills, resources, and so on is a better way of looking at morality rather than we should all try to maximize everyone's expression of will.
What? Mine doesn't say you should maximize. Maximization is pragmatism. It's not about maximization. So that's also a thing you misrepresented about my model. But so you're saying that people have duties and those duties are based on their subjective limitations, right? If you're a cop, you have these duties. If you're a doctor, you have these duties, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
And if you're an all-powerful being, you'd have significantly more duties.
Sure.
So the duties are based on your subjective limitations. And then if you want to know what the objectively moral thing to do is, you start with the maximum, the highest amount of the all-powerful being level of duties. And then you could know the objectively moral thing in all possible situations. And then you would say, okay, now that we know the objectively moral thing in all possible situations, we have to apply the individual limitations of saying, so this guy's a cop. He's not an all-powerful being. So the best he could do in this situation is this. This is his subjective best. This is the best he can do. Right?
Well, I think it's different. Like the duties of an all-powerful, all-knowing being are different in many respects from us. You know, like say
Right.
we were playing a game where you have to guess things. Somebody might know the game inside out and know every single possible guess, so they don't really have a duty to play for one team and, you know, make that team win because they know the whole game. It wouldn't really be a game if they knew everything and they played. So it's kind of there's different duties that fall upon you when you know everything. Like, you know, like you've got the good cop, bad cop dynamic. You need certain features present in the world in order to create, like I said earlier in my opening, that I think the best possible world is one filled with moral agents who are perfected in their moral character. And I don't see how we can perfect ourselves in our moral character unless we go through certain circumstances where we can, you know, make decisions and get it wrong, get it right sometimes, and have consequences for our actions, and learn right from wrong and develop motivations to do the right rather than the wrong, and so on.
Okay, but so I already admitted that yes, an all-powerful being would have different duties than a cop who is not all-powerful. Yes, yeah. I agree. So to discover what objective morality is, like to know what's moral for a cop, you would have to have some kind of objective standard to say, here is the absolute perfect best thing you could do. And then you'd have to work backwards and say, okay, so you can't do that because you're not all powerful, but this is the closest you can get given your limitations of being a cop, right? So you couldn't just, you'd have to have some kind of objective standard to compare to, right?
Yeah, I mean, that could work. I mean, you know, within our tradition, we often understand the concept of an acharya who is, you know, a descending divine, you know, or a great saint who comes down and they live, you know, by their example, we learn how the religious principles are to be applied in different circumstances, because so we then have something to compare to and to live up to. So, you know, no argument there about, you know, having an ideal and comparing to it.
Right. So that's the point, is that you have this ideal, this perfect something or another, and then you say, okay, so you're not perfect, but you can, here is the closest you can get to that, given your subjective limitations, right? And the objective is the perfect, and the subjective is the best you can do, right? Like that's an accurate use of the words.
I usually think of subjective in terms of like postmodernism, like it's just imaginary.
Right. There's lots of objective and subjective,
you know, like
lots of different usages.
There's a purple dragon in my room and it only exists for me. It doesn't exist for anybody else, that kind of thing.
Right. So subjective and objective have lots of different usages. I totally agree. But it's just in this context, I'm saying the objectively moral thing to do is the perfect thing. That's the real objective standard. And then the best you can do isn't the objectively moral thing to do. It's the best you subjectively as an individual can do, right? That's not an incorrect usage of those words in that context.
Yeah, I mean, sure, you could look at it that way. I think looking at it based on duties is more helpful and a simpler description.
they're essentially just the same thing. So the way you're describing duties is the subjectively best you can do given your duties. But it's obviously not the objective standard. You're not a perfect being, so you're going to do the best that you can given your limitations.
But we're not talking about maximization of, reducing imposition on will here. We're talking about something else.
I didn't bring that up here. So this is just for any model of morality. You have an objective standard, and you have the best you can do to get to that objective standard, whatever it is.
Yeah, sure, right.
So the point there was that that's the way I'm describing morality here, is that it's the subjective limitations are not what you're basing the objective morality on. You're basing the objective morality off of the objective standard, and then apply the limitations after that. You filter out the limitations. That's what you have to do to have an objective morality.
I mean, you can talk about objective morality in terms of a given circumstances and say, given that circumstance, this person has objectively done the best they could, or they've chosen one among the available moral options. There may be more than one moral option. There may be more than one wrong option. So we can objectively say that in this circumstance, this person has objectively done a right or a wrong thing.
And those options change based off of the different beings. So if there's a more powerful being, they have more options, and there's a more moral option, and them choosing the option of a less powerful being would be immoral.
Yeah, sure.
So you're agreeing that the subjective limitations are not the basis of objective morality. Those are subjective limitations.
Well, my point, which I think you're agreeing with, is that it's more accurate to call it based on duties,
they're just different terms that mean the same thing. So what you're calling duties is the exact same thing as what I'm calling the subjective best you can do given your limitations. They mean the same thing.
Right, but I think the duties way is a simpler way of wording it. You're kind of talking about it in a more complicated back to front way.
Well, I'd say that your way doesn't actually work. Like, duties don't exist. It's incoherent to say there's such a thing as duties. My way actually makes sense. That's kind of the point I'm illustrating, is that the uses I'm using here seem to make sense a lot more.
I mean, if you bring in some normativity, especially the kind you can get from theism, then you can have duties. So, you get a job, the job has a job description. You agree to perform the duties that come with the job when you take on the job. There's no categorical imperative. It's not like you have to do what your employer has asked you to do, but you did agree to it. And if you don't do it, you're going to lose the job. So there's some normativity there in that sense. So similarly, you could have that with, getting a human form of life, that there's certain obligations that come with having a human form of life, and there's certain obligations that come with having a particular, position in society. Like, people have different duties based on their career,
like slavery,
and families, and so on. And if you don't do that, then you may not get a human birth in your next life.
Sounds like slavery. Sounds like you're obligated to have some kind of rules that you have to abide by without your consent. By something else. Sounds like slavery when you say duty.
Well, we're inextricably existing in this reality. We don't have a choice, do we? And there's the principles that govern this reality which we live in. And if you don't abide by them, like, for example, the description of, where you go in your next life is based on the qualities you have in this life. So if you live like an animal, you'll take birth as an animal. If you make good use of the human form of life, then you'll get a human life. And if you become spiritually perfected, then you'll go to a realm of other spiritually perfected beings. So if you perfect yourself in moral character, in other words, then you get to be surrounded in your next life by other beings who are perfected in their moral character. So it's not like it's some kind, the destinations and the results of your actions are fitting. You just get surrounded by people who are similar to you. I don't see how that, you can call it slavery if you want, but it's just natural consequences.
Well, I didn't mean to make a criticism of just the Hare Krishna worldview there, but just as a comparison, clearly it seems more moral to give everyone their own universe and let them design it however they want. And if they don't want to die and have immortality, they should have that choice. Or if they want to be reborn as a chicken or a cow or whatever, they should have that choice. And that system that I'm just described is clearly a morally superior system to yours, which would be good evidence of why mine is better, in addition to the other reasons. But the point I was making earlier is that when you say we have duties, like when you're a human, you have certain duties as a human or whatever, that sounds like slavery. That sounds like someone else has conscripted you to obey a certain set of rules, and if you don't, you're being punished, which is, like I said earlier, a more immoral system than the one I described, where everyone gets their own universe and you can do it whatever you want with. So clearly my system seems to get morality correct, more likely to be correct than yours.
So the reason why it's moral is because it brings about the greater good. So your idea, I don't think it brings about the greater good, because if we could just, all live in our own fantasy world and have it the way we want it all the time, I don't see how we would ever become perfected in our character and eventually attain to a higher and more satisfying reality. So your idea, I think, is nihilistic and, doesn't result in the elevation of us to a better reality. Like, we don't want to live in a false reality. There's a thought experiment, I can't remember the name of it, which is, suppose you could program your own virtual reality machine, and you could, choose how big your bank balance was, what kind of vehicles you had, how big your garage was, how many cars you had, and you could set all the parameters, and you could enter into this reality, except you were the only person there. And while you were in there, you wouldn't know. You'd think you were interacting with real people. You'd think it was a real reality, but it was just something you'd programmed, and all the people there didn't actually exist. When the thought experiment is offered, you don't get people saying, yeah, I'd go into that.
I would definitely go into that. But so my analogy, that wasn't like my analogy. So my analogy is that you get your own universe, you get to design it however you want. So which would include other people can visit you if they want to. So mine would be just as real as everything else. It's not a virtual world, it's a real one. You get your own real universe, and you get to really meet real people who voluntarily choose to cohabitate with you. So mine wasn't like yours. So why would my universe, where everyone gets their own universe and they can design it however they want and choose what they experience, be a less moral universe than yours, where people are conscripted with duties they didn't consent to be punished whether they agree to this system or not?
Well, I'd argue that your system wouldn't result in the greatest good. I think it would result in, we might just all grow more and more selfish in our inability to interact with one another in productive, meaningful, cordial ways would become worse and worse as we all, became more and more hedonistic and, self-interested and so on. And I think that kind of hedonism would, we'd be unabated in our hedonism. So, that this reality we're in kind of brings our hedonism down a little bit, which enables us to, develop some wisdom and learn that there's more to life than just satisfying your senses and so on. We have to learn to cooperate, and this being forced to do these things creates moral character in us and allows us to grow as people. Whereas your reality would just kind of be like some kind of, simulated reality where I don't see how we would ever be moving towards a greater reality where we actually develop our moral character.
So you're saying a world with rape and murder and torture and cancer and death without consent is a morally superior world to one that has none of that without consent, because some people are going to be less selfish in X amount of time.
Well, yeah, I mean, the argument would be something to the effect of the ends justify the means. But you do get people saying that. You do find people who've gone through all sorts of abuse that come out of it and say, I've gained invaluable wisdom from this. Like Gabor Mate worked in palliative care for 10 years, and he even had one patient that died of cancer. And, the self-reflection he was able to do while on his deathbed, he got valuable wisdom. And he actually said to Gabor Mate that, this experience has taught me wisdom, which is so valuable that it's worth it. And that was someone who died from the cancer saying that. So
what's more moral, to force someone to go through that pain and suffering to learn it, or to give them the option? Well, you can learn all this stuff if you go through this pain and suffering, and they can choose whether they want to go through it or not. Which one of those is more moral?
Well, how do we know we didn't choose to come here and go through these experiences? We might have been given another option.
It's not what I asked. So I asked, is it more moral to give someone the option to go through suffering to learn something? Or is it more moral to force them to suffer, whether they choose it or not, to cause them to learn it?
I think the action reaction that we get in this material world is just like intrinsic things. It's not like a punishment thing. So like if you have immoral character, you get surrounded by other people with immoral character. So it's not like it's forced upon you in some kind of like unfitting way. It's just, these are natural consequences for these actions. And, like with say drug intervention, say somebody, we apprehend somebody who's a drug addict and intervene on them, put them through all sorts of detoxing. They're suffering like anything, but eventually they get out the other end of it and say, I'm so glad you guys forced me through that, because now I have a good life.
Okay, so again, is it more moral to force someone through rape and murder and torture and prison without their consent, what they didn't want? Or is it more moral to give them the option, say, you can go experience this world of rape and murder and torture, or you can go to your own world without any of that stuff? Which is more moral? Force them into being raped and murdered and tortured and cancered without their consent, or to give them the option to say, no, I'd rather not have that? Which is more moral?
So the Vaishnava tradition does talk about how we made a choice to come here, and rather than going to the spiritual world, and our actions in this world have earned us those consequences. So okay, we did choose this.
Not what I asked. So it's perfectly fine. If we chose to be here, that's perfectly fine. But I'm asking, which is more moral? Is it more moral to force someone to be raped and murdered and tortured without their consent? Or is it more moral to give them the option where they can say, no, I'd rather not have that? Which one is more moral?
I mean, I would say in this case that it's a question of the ends justifying the means. So say with the drug addict example, you say you forced the person through the detox, they didn't want to do it. You gave them the option that they could just, commit suicide, and then they could just, not have any of that. But instead of doing that, you just said, and you suppose it was guaranteed, you knew that this person was going to succeed at going through this detox and come out the other end. And when they were finishing it, they were going to say, I'm so glad you put me through that because now I have a good life. Then I would say it based on the outcome and based on their future self, or we could say their higher self. By higher self, I mean, themself when they're thinking rationally and properly informed. If their higher self would want you to do that, then I would say it's the moral thing to do. If when like if your 2-year-old wants to, say your 4-year-old wants to become a unicorn, or wants to commit suicide, should we let them do that? They're just expressing their will, how they like, and choosing what they want. But we don't let them do that because their cognitive faculties aren't properly developed. We withhold their ability to make these decisions. So similarly, with a drug addict, or someone who's impaired in some way due to not fully understanding reality and making bad decisions and covering their consciousness over with material energy, if we let them make unabashed decisions without some kind of like, well, this is what's best for you, so we're going to kind of nudge you in that direction anyway, then I would say it's immoral. The moral thing is to understand what's in the person's best interest, what their higher self would want, and to put them through what they need to get there.
Yeah, my view is that it's not moral to force people to be raped without their consent. I'd say it's more moral to give them the option to say no. That would be my position, and why I think is a pretty good way to conclude is why my model is significantly more moral than yours, has a better understanding of objective morality.
I mean, on your model, rape is just something that just happens. It's just an unfortunate feature of reality. I don't see how you're accounting for the existence of these things.
If it's against consent, if people don't consent, it's immoral under my model.
Yeah, so it's immoral on the Vaishnava view too.
Yeah, but in yours, you're forced to go through it without consent. In mine, we would say no, you would have to consent, or it would be impossible. So in your understanding,
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, as you just said, you said the ends justifies the means. So under yours, being forced to be raped against your consent, if it led to the detoxing, whatever, would be moral. And in my view, no, it's moral to give someone the option to say, no, I don't want that. That would be more moral. So it seems like my model has a better understanding of morality. But I'm ready to go to the Q&A if you are.
Yeah, okay.
You got it. And with that, we will indeed go into Q&A. Want to say, our guests are linked in the description, as you can see in this bottom right box right here. And yes, that's even if you're listening via podcast. You guys, if you have not already, pull out your favorite podcast app, such as these right here on screen. Find Modern Day Debate. We are really excited that people, to my surprise, found the podcast useful. Because, I mean, we work hard on this show some nights. And so we are really thrilled and want to let you know, if you're listening via podcast, both Tom and Arjuna's links are in the description box for that podcast episode as well. And so with that, we're going to jump into the Q&A, but do want to do one more housekeeping thing. In particular, folks, we are very excited. We've got a lot coming up in the next several weeks. Have to let you know, tomorrow night, Yaron Brook, who is the executive, kind of the head honcho of the Ayn Rand Institute, controversial, juicy, he will be debating Mouthy Infidel on whether or not welfare should exist. So that's going to be an exciting one. And then also Monday, you don't want to miss this one as well, you guys. Dr. Josh and Skylar Fiction are teaming up yet again, a power team, as they are taking on Cliff and Stuart Nettle. That's going to be a juicy one on Old Testament ethics on trial. So you don't want to miss it, folks. And so thanks for your questions. We're going to jump into these and do appreciate it. This first one coming in from Franks92 says, Rise Chair Bears. You guys, your matching chairs are the most charming thing I've ever seen on this channel.
I think Chair Bears is like the name that we're giving my followers. We've agreed Chair Bears is probably like because people name their followers, their fan base or whatever.
All right, always has to be about Tom. But anyway, yes, they're beautiful chairs. So thank you very much for your questions. Or Spicy Roads, thanks for your super sticker. And Sigma Annie says, graven images of the chair are immoral. Arjuna, that was a bold strategy. I like it. Good day to you, sir, says, Arjuna, if morality is based on human well-being, certain actions objectively move us towards or away from that goal, despite anyone's subjective opinion.
Yeah, so if you start with the value of human form of life, then you've got something which, of course, leads you to morality, but then we need to understand how you're arriving at the fact that human life is valuable and how you're ontologically grounding the existence of that fact.
Gotcha, and thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Good Day, or Rodent last name says, we need better words than just morality. Loaded language can be like a marble on a mountain peak. It can roll in many directions.
Sure, but I mean, we kind of agree what morality it means, like the principles governing what is right and wrong, kind of a thing.
Gotcha. And Sigma Annie says, I wonder if benevolent impositions on will are moral, like me imposing on James's synapses to proclaim, quote unquote, I punch babies in exchange for $5. Thank you. And thank you. Good day to you, sir, for your question, says Arjuna. Why did God even issue a brain instead of just sticking the Veda holy books in your head?
Why did God issue a brain rather than sticking the holy books in your head? I'm sure I understand the question.
I think it's kind of like, well, why didn't he just download the Vedas into our brains without us having to read it?
Oh, I mean, we chose to turn our backs on God, so God's facilitating that desire by allowing the possibility of ignorance of God. There's some quote, I can't remember what it was. There's enough lightness in the world for anyone who wants to seek it, and enough darkness for anyone who wants to seek it. So we can explore our different desires and figure out that they're not satisfying, and ultimately, if we're become exhausted, all of that, and return to God. And, without the possibility of exhausting our material desires, then it's not, meaningful. There needs to be an alternative, and we need to exhaust these desires so that we can meaningfully return to God as a choice, both as a choice and both by being free of alternative desires. Then we can have real love.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Rodent last name says, I derive all of my moral subjectivism from TJump's chair. TJump's chair is a neutral arbiter of what is comfy and what is not comfy. Thank you for that chair. Your precious chair, Tom. We're going to have to, when we go on tour, we're going to have to load that up and bring it with. So this one comes in from...
Or at least get a backdrop, just like...
That's true. Tom, you need to get a printed banner that we could put behind you in the debate. That would be cool.
Well, I was thinking about getting like a neon sign of my logo. That'd be pretty cool.
Touche. And Sigma Annie says, if we can't know the entirety of a God's character, such as a full knowledge of his morality, how can we presume that what we think we understand about his morality objectively reflects his morality?
Oh, sorry, can you read the first part again?
Sure. They said, if we can't know the entirety of a God's character, then in sum, how can we presume that we, that what we think about God's morality objectively reflects it?
Well, yeah, that's raising the epistemic problem. So, you could think that what's morality based on, God, count what's issuing from God as objective morality and be mistaken. But I would accept that as a concern, but simply say that you can think, you've stumbled upon divine knowledge and be mistaken, but once you have got divine knowledge, it will supersede any false knowledge. So you could have ascending levels of realization. It's not possible to have true knowledge and then trade that in for false knowledge. So you could go from one false belief to another false belief, but you can't go from the true understanding back to the false belief. There's something that fixes you in it once you have it.
Gotcha, and thank you very much for your question. Thank you. Let's see. Rodent no last name says, Arjuna, if God commanded you to do something against your personal moral beliefs, would you do it?
This is something I've thought about and discussed. Suppose like we give the example of you could think God's commanding but like suppose the epistemology is the guru speaking for God and the guru tells you to jump off a bridge. Well, I'm just going to think that I'm either mistaken about what the guru is saying or the guru happens to not be representing God in that moment, because my intuitions that God would not say that to me and my intuitions that I should not do that supersede any kind of reason I have for thinking that God's telling me to do that. So I would not do the wrong thing if it didn't agree with, we have an idea in Krishna consciousness of super soul in the heart. So, like the scripture might tell you to do something, but, God is also there in the heart instructing you. So if my heart is telling me that something is absolutely immoral, I'm going to listen to that and not do it.
You got it. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Jordan Gerard, who says, if morality is a field, it could be manipulated to suit subjective whims, so it isn't objective. You can't answer, quote, ought we manipulate the field or not?
Well, I mean, the fact that there's a field doesn't mean we can manipulate it. Like we can't manipulate the Higgs field, so it doesn't make any sense. The fact that the field being there doesn't mean we can manipulate field. And you can't make Higgs negative. You can't make a negative field. So the fact that there's a field doesn't mean it could be anything either.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Farron Salas says, we are in a simulation with TJump's chair all the way down and pictures of turtles stacked on top of each other. Very nice. Stefan Brace, thank you for your question, says, Arjuna, so if you live a life that quote unquote God doesn't approve of, it's moral for him to make a human live their next life as an animal?
Well, it's not necessarily based on God approving or not approving. There's nothing like sectarian morality or anything you could call subjective that you find in Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. If you enjoy eating flesh and your whole life is centered around satisfying your desire to eat meat, then it's only fitting for you to take birth as a tiger. And, you get a body fit for your desires and the way you're expressing them. If you're not making proper use of the human form of life, the human form of life affords us the ability to inquire into the absolute truth, to question why we're here, what exists, and so on. If you're not doing that and you're just simply living like an animal, the only difference being that you go around on 4 wheels rather than on 4 legs, then there's no reason why you shouldn't just do that in a human body. In many respects, animal bodies are better suited for sense gratification than human bodies are.
Gotcha. And thank you very much. Stefan Brace, nope, read that one. Rodent, no last name, says, is a cheetah killing an antelope on the African landscape moral? Is a human hunter killing an antelope moral? Is a virus killing an antelope, quote unquote, moral? Is killing a virus moral?
Any involuntary imposition of will is moral. So killing an antelope is immoral no matter who does it. Viruses don't have a will, but killing viruses is not immoral.
So the moral status of an action depends on, the moral agency of the person committing the act. So a tiger doesn't have moral agency. It's just simply surviving and it's acting according to the nature of a tiger. There's no morality when one animal eats another animal. It's just that they're just, both animals are just functioning according to their nature. Whereas if a human kills an antelope, they're choosing to do that. So that humans are moral agents, so they can get, there's moral value to their actions.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And this one coming in from Topot2 says, how many babies does James have to punch to create analogies for today's debate? Believe it or not. Tom talks about me as much as he does in his speeches because he loves me, because we're brothers. A lot of people don't know that, but really special. So
7 babies. It was 7.
Ozian says, Kal-El revealed to me through personal revelation that TJump is correct. So you ought to be moral, Arjuna.
Superman reference.
Sweet. I'll accept that revelation. I'm converted.
Next up, EndoXD says, Arjuna, your morals are based on the presupposition that God exists and that God is good. Mine are based on the presupposition that well-being is good. Aren't ours both subjective?
Well, I mean, one presupposition is just, your opinion. I mean, presupposing God exists, the debate here isn't, is it the case that God exists? So that would be a different debate. But given, the assumption that God exists, we have a better account of the existence of objective moral values, and they have a ground to issue from, whereas on physicalism, there's just a bunch of sacks of chemicals interacting with one another.
Gotcha.
Welcome to the show. It's Friday.
Thank you very much. Next question. This one coming in from Barry. Appreciate your super sticker. And Soldier of Science says, James, Tom, and Arjuna, thanks for the show. Yes, I'm shamelessly saying, with 3 more subs, I will launch a new video on my deconversion story. How about it? I think they're saying 3 more subs. I would think it's maybe to their channel or mine, like Modern Day Debate ours. I can't tell. But Soldier of Science, we're glad you hang out here, my friend, and let's jump into the next one. So, great, we've caught up. Let me jump over to the standard question list. We have one from Chaos Theory. They've been gunning you in the chat, Tom. They said, I have a crazy question. Ask Tom if it's actually wrong for Tom to marry a pig.
Not if the pig could consent and have enough intelligence to be of the intellectual age of consent, then no, it would not be.
Gotcha. And thank you very much. But yes, welcome to the show indeed, folks. It is Friday. We're excited for that. And so John Smith said, question for Arjuna, do you demonstrate why God, quote, cannot be wrong without appealing to authority? Would the universe look different if God could be wrong?
Well, if God could be wrong, he wouldn't be God. It's like true by the definition of what God exists. So perhaps the real question is, does God exist? And that would be a different topic.
Gotcha. And Stripper Liquor, thanks for your support out there in the live chat. Says smash that like button. And please do smash that like button if you've been pleased by this debate, or if you're pleased by this question from Darth Revan, which is, Arjuna, or ask Arjuna if he is aware of. Oh, we got that one actually. I covered that one with him because they thought you were a Christian, but they found out. How do I pronounce it? Is it Hare Krishna?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. There was actually one dude that found a Bhagavad Gita in the bushes once, and he started chanting Hare Krishna. Read the whole thing, was convinced, and he was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But yeah, it's Hare.
Hare. Okay,
Hare
thank
Krishna,
you for
Hare Krishna.
And thank you very much for your question. This one just came in from Rodent, no last name, who says, if Stan Lee, so writer, creator of Marvel, wrote Revelations of Spider-Man, how do ancient comic books prove God exists?
Oh, sorry, read it again. It'd help if they were coming up on the screen.
They said, if Stan Lee wrote Revelations of Spider-Man, so, like if he wrote a holy book about Spider-Man, how do ancient comic books prove that God exists?
Well, I mean, you've got many different lines of evidence pointing to God's existence, philosophical arguments like, ontological arguments, cosmological arguments. You've got personal experience and so on. So I don't see how Spider-Man fits the same category of those, that you get serious philosophical debate all through history around God's existence. You don't get that around Spider-Man. But yeah, as far as the real proof for God's existence exists on a private level to someone who's engaged in a practice which elevates their consciousness to the point where they can experience God.
Gotcha. And Antipode Cereal, thanks for your super chat, said, Tom Jump, how do you go from quote-unquote killing babies is wrong to quote-unquote it's natural law like gravity?
It's a complicated argument. Check the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and Moral Naturalism. You can just read the whole thing on there.
Sassy Tommy. NOXD says, fun debate. I enjoyed this. Thank you, you three. Thank you. And we can't thank the guests enough, you guys. We've got more questions, but I want to remind you they are linked in the description. And this next one coming in from, thanks for your super chat, Cole Beasley says, James, how do I get on here to participate in a debate? That's a great question. So, folks, here's the trick. If you email me at moderndaydebate@gmail.com, that's my email. And please, just so we can streamline it, because I'm always behind on emails, if you can let me know your preferred topic, what your stance on it is, and ideally, if you have an opponent lined up, we oftentimes, if you're a first timer, will ask if you will do at least one tag team debate so we can get a feel for you. That's not necessary. There are ways if you want to do a one-on-one, but it's probably more. So we'll talk over email. Thanks for your question, Lockbeard, who says, in all caps, this entire thing. He's yelling the entire thing. There is no universal morality. Establishing a moral code makes you a religious cult. I can't believe the atheists made me have to say that.
Yeah, he really needs to check the Stanford or the Phil Surveys paper, which says the vast majority of philosophers, like academic philosophers, are atheists, like 70%. And they're also moral realists. They also believe in objective morality. So it's pretty sad that most YouTube atheists don't realize that, yeah, actually, you can believe in objective morality without a God just fine. Most philosophers do it.
Juicy. And Timcast Podcast says, in all caps, order to cease and desist. The big, comfortable chair is protected by a utility and service patent. Continue use at your own peril. Thank you for that.
Why violating patents?
So many patents. Tom, I love that chair. It's a lazy boy. I think you've told us before. We've always asked, but let's see. What was the model of it, though? Because isn't like Lazy Boy has like certain models, like in addition to the make?
I looked it up at one point. I think it's Cantella or something like that.
Ooh, sophisticated, Tom. I like that.
I've got 2 chairs today.
That's true. I mean, you're giving Tom a run for his money finally. I mean, only the chair could. Dave Langer says, question for TJump. Do you like your chocolate chip cookies warm out of the oven, or do you prefer them to be cooled off?
No, they got to be warm and mushy and squishy and barely cooked, because if they get hard, they're just not good.
Nasty guy. And John Smith says, another question for Arjuna. Why is quote-unquote higher existence better than being able to choose who or what we can be? How do you know that returning to being a monkey isn't better?
Well, there's objective measures for how animal life is in many respects suffering. I mean, like you look at birds and they're constantly darting their heads around. You study sea life is particularly bad. You can't learn about, like you watch YouTube videos and learn about all these deep sea creatures. There's not a single description of a deep sea creature that doesn't either talk about how it's eaten or what it eats. It's a constant fight for survival. And I mean, if your thing is just sense gratification, then being a pigeon or something like that, like they can have sex like 20 times a day. So you might like to take birth as a pigeon, but if you like, sort of getting into like understanding the deeper nature of reality and more getting at the essence of things, above the material level of sense gratification, then it might not be ideal. And if, suppose there was someone who was going to infinitely spend their life as a drug addict, then it might be better to intercede and, get it to the point where they weren't a drug addict and actually had a good life, because the life of a drug addict is objectively suffering. They have no good personal relationships and they've got a dependency where they're miserable when they're not on drug and so on.
Gotcha. And Soldier of Science sends in his question saying, Arjuna, was singing for Jane's addiction better than porno for Pyros?
I don't know the latter song. I don't know if I can answer that.
Some sort of adult film. Rodent No Last Name says, I had personal experience with Spider-Man and believe the Marvel comic universe, which dates back to the discovered manuscripts of the ancient times of the 1980s. I'm from the 1980s. They say, how is Spider-Man not the basis for morality?
I mean, obviously that's a parody question. I mean, Spider-Man's just a superhero who's dreamed up by some comic. The comic doesn't even claim to be true, whereas you get the scriptures claiming to represent reality. And, you know, in many respects, we can argue the Vedas are accurately describe, at least the features that we're able to verify are accurately fit reality.
You got it. And Cole Beasley says, James, you sneezed on a live event, laughing my freaking arse off. Yes, I forgot to mute. Did you guys hear that? Anyway, Barry, thanks for your super chat. Says, Arjuna, you mentioned the quote unquote many lines of evidence for the existence of God, such as philosophical, cosmological, ontological arguments, and personal experience. Do you think that adding a bunch of bad evidence equals good evidence?
That actually says Aram. I don't know who Aram is. It doesn't say Arjuna.
I figured it was a typo.
He never mentioned any of those arguments.
Yeah, I mean, that's another debate, and it's not something I've got into personally myself, but the fact that philosophers to this day take these arguments seriously, and like, you know, even the ontological argument, which in popular circles is kind of scoffed at, yeah, there's like serious philosophers on both sides of the debate that take that argument seriously. So I mean, you can call them bad evidence as you want, but there's intelligent people with degrees who study this level stuff at the highest level that think that there's some weight to it. And then personal experience. I mean, if personal experience isn't evidence for anything, then we've got problems. We've got general skepticism there. So someone has an experience of God firsthand. I don't know how you can raise doubts about that without raising doubts about anybody's ability to perceive anything about reality.
Gotcha. And we might have time for, holy smokes, we're going on 2 hours. That didn't seem like 2 hours. I've been like living the dream. This has been super fun. It's flown by. Tape Deck has one last question they're going to squeeze in. It said, how can a lion do anything immoral if we can come back as one? Are we stuck as a lion after that life? Wait, let me read this.
His question is that
quiet. Are we stuck as a lion after that life since can't be any more immoral?
So his question is asking, since there's reincarnation, but lions can't do anything immoral, how could you be a lion and then have a moral life to reincarnate as something differently if none of your actions are morally significant?
Yeah, so when you have an animal form of life, you're burning off your karma. I mean, it said we have unlimited stores of karma because we've lived unlimited lives, so you don't have to burn off all your karma, but you go through some amount of your karma, and then, you know, it might be your next life, or it might be many lives later that you eventually take birth as a human again. And at that point, you're kind of just riding on your karma. It's only when you get a human form of life again that you have moral agency, and your choices impact on where you go. I mean, there are stories of animals getting liberated actually, but they're not the norm. They're kind of just exceptional cases.
You got it. In Lockbeard says, sorry, in many chats we're told to put questions in caps. Oh, really? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. That's cool. I get a kick out of hearing like how other chats work. Like, it's interesting just to hear like the different rules that different channels have just in virtue of that. So anyway, we want to say thank you to our guests. Look at these guys. Look at them. They're tremendous. We love them. I just love putting you guys on the spot. Thank you, Tom and Arjuna. They're both linked in the description, folks, and we really do appreciate them. The debaters are the lifeblood of the channel. If I tried to do a channel like Tom, where it's just me debating all the time, I just couldn't do it. You know, I mean, and Arjuna, I'm guessing you've got debates on your channel as well. So want to let you know, folks, if you're at Modern Day Debate, you must love debates. Tom has debates on his channel all the time. Arjuna, I know you've got to have some on there, I'm guessing, because you've...
Yeah.
And because I know you've come on here before, and so you probably got at least some of the ones from on here, and I'm guessing you maybe have other ones. So
I've got little videos I produce too, like sort of rationality rules kind of style of just arguing sort of philosophy of religion points. Working on one right now on evidence and reincarnation, and my last one up is an attack on William Lane Craig's exclusivism.
Ooh, interesting. James Likey. I'll have to check that out. And Cole Beasley, last one, says Dogecoin to the moon. Oh, that reminds me. I don't even know what that means. Is that some like young person?
It's a cryptocurrency.
That just went up by like 700% in the past week.
You serious?
Apparently, it's got no fundamentals behind it, so it's all just hype and stuff. So if you're into gambling, go for it.
Ooh, juicy. And Rodent, no last name, fires the last one and says, with great power comes great responsibility. How is that not the basis for moral Spider-Man?
Oh, is that why there's so much reference to Spider-Man? Because I don't get into comics and stuff. I just get into Mahabharata and stuff. That I wish they do more comics about the Vedic stories. They're so much cooler.
That's super interesting. And so we do appreciate our guests. They're the lifeblood of the channel. So thank you both, Tom and Arjuna. It's been a true pleasure. Folks, I will be back in just a moment with a post-credit scene letting you know about upcoming debates such as this one. Less than a week away, you guys. The Book of Daniel, Prophecy or Forgery. I'll tell you about other ones once I'm back. So thanks one last time to our guests, and I will be right back, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, that was absolutely amazing. So you guys were really excited. Thank you guys for coming by. It's always fun to have you here. So I do want to get to say hi to you guys. I just love hanging out here. It's always fun. And so I want to say we love you. Thank you for hanging out with us. Oh, Neff, you just let's see. We'll save this for Tom for next time. You just missed him. I don't know if you knew. But yes, basically those last super chats. Well, since I think Barry is an atheist, I'll maybe you and Nephilim Free are up for a debate. It looks like you happen to disagree. And Nephilim Free, I don't want to read the one challenge is I don't want to read super chats that are partial, just because I don't want to take sides after the debaters have gone. So I can't read a super chat that says, like Christianity is true or atheism is true or whatever, But anyway, want to say we are stoked to have you here. And thank you, Barry, for your super chat. Thank you, Nephilim Free, for your super chat. And stoked to see you. Timo says, hit like. Please do hit that like if you enjoyed this show. Thanks, Brian Stevens and Timo, for your hitting like reminders. Thanks for your support, both of you. And we are excited, you guys, as there is just epic stuff coming up. I have to tell you about this. It is going to knock your socks off. But first, like I said, let me say hi to you in the chat. Just appreciate you hanging out here. I Like Turtles. Glad you are here. Good to see you again. Ian Spider, good to see you as well. Daniel Kasmer. Have I seen you here before? I'm like, the name sounds familiar, but the avatar looks different. I can't remember. Amy Newman, good to see you, of course. Glad you're back. Tape Deck, good to see you. Chad Martin and Boiled Pizza. Raw Nakedness, thank you for coming by. And 000, thank you for coming by as well. Truth Shoes 101, stoked you came by. Now, Mark Reed, we're pumped you're here. Mark Reed, let's see. My boy. Now, Nephilim Free, I see you were in the chat. Neph, I know you're too cool for school, but I did email you like 4 days ago. So, I mean, whatever you feel like getting around to responding. But Chad Martin, stoked you came by. And Anzi Sorvisto, good to see you again. Soldier of Science, glad you're back. Truth Shoes 101, pumped you have returned. Augurer, he's an angry fellow. We love him. Thanks so much. We are glad you came by. Augurer is a cranky fellow in the chat, folks. You probably noticed. But, we keep him around. He keeps us on our toes. We like that, It keeps things lively. And so, it was a little, fun, kind of sparring, a little banter. He's a sad little man. Augurer, I'm kidding. Come on. It's okay. But he's entertaining. I mean, even if he's a cranky fellow. But But Augur, we love you. How long? Glad you came by. And John Pelosi, good to see you. Sigma Any, thanks for coming by. Nocturnal Prelude, glad you're here. Pongo Gigantic, pumped you are back as well. And that's right, EndoXD, good to see you. And is there anybody I missed? Albert Bitcoin, of course, is here. Good to see you, Albert. Never misses a show. He's our favorite bot. Sigma Any, thank you for your super chat. Appreciate it. And Nephilim Free says, welcome, James. Thank you, Neph. And the Myriad Dharma, thank you for coming by. We're glad you're with us. Somebody, thanks for coming by too. And Darth Revan, good to see ya. Thanks for your question today. Sideshow Nav, glad you made it, Bob. Hope you're doing well. Forgive me. Am I okay to call? I just doxed you, man. Just the first name though. But thanks for your stripper liquor. Says 200 likes equals James shows. Definitely not showing my underwear, but I will say yes, we are stoked. I will show you what's behind the curtain, you guys. I do try to pull out something cool from behind the curtain. So this is a curtain behind me. That's not actually a wall. And it's not actually just like black space that goes on forever. It's actually a curtain. So we'll show you something cool. If we can, let's shoot for 150 likes. Can you do it, folks? I mean, I'm telling you, there's got to be something cool back there. I can't remember. I think I'll show you some of my cool stuff. I've got some interesting stuff. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll show you. I've got something on this shelf over here that I wanted to show you guys for a long time. It's a book signed by one of my favorites and one of the most, frankly, one of the most, a very famous psychologist. But anyway, Truth Shoes 101 says, love back at you, James. Thank you for that, Truth Shoes. And Raw Nakedness, you are just like Nephilim Free because you are not very good at getting back to people, just so you know. So calling you out. And Silver Harlow says, sorry I missed it. I hope it went well. Well, Silver, we appreciate that. You made it. So I hope if you get to watch it later, cool. If you don't, well, tomorrow we've got another one. So believe me, you won't regret it. Tomorrow's going to be absolutely amazing. So don't miss it. It's going to be cool. And John Pelosi, good to see you. But let's see here. I do have to ask. Let's see. I always like getting, oh, yeah. Is there anybody here who I'm always curious to see how YouTube works? Is it such that, in other words, is this anybody in chat? Is this your first time you've ever seen this channel where you're like, what is this channel? What is this strange thing that I'm in right now? This modern day debate. So it is a neutral platform. If you didn't know, we have no videos where I take any sort of position on anything because that for me, I'm like, I don't want to, it's, if I ever do put out position videos, which I don't know if it would be, maybe in 10 or 20 years, it'll not be on this channel. This channel will always be a debate channel and only that. In other words, if there's a view getting criticized on the channel, we're going to be darn sure that there's going to be somebody kind of giving pushback to that criticism. So it's always going to be balanced in that way. And as Brian Stevens likes to say, his catchphrase is fair and balanced, he likes to say. So I don't know where he got that from, but I'm like, okay, I guess that sounds good. So we really do work to be nonpartisan. Antipode Cereal said, thanks for feeding our egos. Thank you, Antipode. And last question came in from Ansi Sorvisto. Thank you for your super chat. Says, work has been super busy. Uni consumed my life. I hate and love teaching. This is just for you, James. Keep it up. Oh, well, I think I maybe remember you telling me. So are you also working on your doctorate? Whether you be working just as an instructor or if you're master's or doctorate, or just whatever it is, I hope it's going well. I feel that this is my spring break. It's been more busy than my normal schedule, for real. I've been probably more productive, which is great. I don't get to teach this week, but yeah, Stefan Brace said, James, are you in a PhD program? I am. I'm working on my PhD in Iowa psychology. I've got about 2 years left, maybe a little bit less. I've got my comprehensive exam so I'm finishing up the master's this semester, which is en route for the PhD. So I'm in the PhD track, and then this fall I'll have the comprehensive exam, and then dissertation after that. So it's going to be exciting. Nephilim Free, thank you for your email in the live chat, man. I will share that with the world. So, but Let's see. NOXD says, how was Kent versus Maddie? I missed it. Gonna watch it later. Hey, it was actually, you know what Maddie told me afterward? She said that was actually like, she said, especially compared to Nathan, she said that was really cordial. And it was. It wasn't a dumpster fire. I know everybody's like, ooh, modern day debate is just dumpster fires, which, by the way, was tonight a dumpster fire? I don't think so. Maybe I like being a contrarian, folks. I want to disagree with everybody, but I will tell you, those who say, ooh, modern day debate is just dumpster fires, not true. Nah. Now, here's the thing. We let it happen sometimes. Sometimes it goes off the rails a little bit. But you know what? At least it's authentic. Because some channels, it's like the moderator is so controlling. It's boring. It's overproduced. They're trying to control it, manufacture it too much. Let it be spontaneous. That's what makes it fun. You don't know what's going to happen all the time. That's an exciting debate. And so we have plenty of calm debates, but we let them happen naturally. We don't force it. So like tonight, respectful, good debate. They weren't cutting each other off. They weren't yelling at each other or anything like that. And it was natural, and that's why it was great. Not because James is jumping in every 8 seconds. So I know some people say, oh, but believe me, there's a method to the madness, folks. There's a plan. There's a reason behind it. And a lot of the reasons I don't even tell. I've told them on other nights, but there are reasons we do it this way. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's like James is just being lazy or something. And it's like, oh, it may be the case that we have more reasons than people are aware of. And I mean, sometimes I hear from those other, those other debate channels, subscribers. I mean, I don't hear much though, because they're sleeping. They're sleeping because when they're watching some of these other channels, not all debate channels, there are some good ones out there that are phenomenal that I love. But there are some overproduced, just, so controlled, boring. You fall asleep during them. So do their subscribers. Very sad. But anyway. John Pelosi, good to see you. You got me. You put a quarter in me, But yeah, Sideshow Nav, you're right. Bob is an easy name to forget. They will probably forget that's your real name soon. Sorry. But yeah, thank you for seriously, Bob. You are the man. I know it's a fake name. Your name's not real. Bob. It's not really Bob. It's like Nephilim Free. It's Nephilim Free. But Nephilim Free says, James, start using a soft light source. You're right. You know what? Cameron told me that too. Is this a little better? It's got to be a little better. Amazing. It's true. We have the lighting could be improved. Sometimes they get kind of lazy, but you're right. So thank you for that feedback, Neff. And Brian Stevens says we're 15 likes away from 150. That is epic. You guys, you want to see what's behind this curtain. You want to see how many anti-gas medications I have behind this curtain. A lot of them, folks. I mean, I'll show you something real. I'm not just going to show you like, ooh, a Kleenex box. Believe me. But yes, Andrew Cole says, I like dumpster fires. Yeah, I mean, it is true. Once in a while, they're exciting. And like I said, it's like, at least they're authentic, despite their problems. And so Nephilim Free says, start using a reflected broad source. It looks much better. That's actually a great, Neff, I could totally, now I just thought of it. I'm like, I could totally do that with this light. And I haven't really done it very well. So I have a plan for real. Stefan Brace says, I need more Alex Stein comedy. And Nocturnal Prelude says, James, you need a ring light. All right. Yeah. Enough. You guys dogpiling on with Nephilim Free on me. Okay. So I'm teasing. You're right. It is. We could do better with it. It's going to get better. But Nephilim Free says, James, as a professional photographer, you should start using a soft light source. Reflected broad source looks much better. Thank you for the 4th time telling me that, Neff. I promise I'll actually do it. I've got to figure out a way to disperse my light source. Right now it's like concentrated, but I'm thinking of ideas. I'm like, there's probably a way I could do this. But Tapa2 says, Leonidav on Twitch asked, do you plan to maintain the channel after your doctorate? I do, absolutely. I am excited for it. You guys, I'm committed to this. If you're kind of wondering, if you ever wonder if you're like, I wonder how long this channel is going to be. Is James going to get tired out of it and stop in 6 months? No. I am planning on doing this. You guys, I'm not joking. I really do. YouTube deserves a better class of moderation. Now, like I said, there are great channels out there, so I'm not trying to put anybody down when I say that. But we're going to give them that. Namely, I'm devoted. I will continue to do this for like 10 years from now. You're going to be like, wow, I can't believe it's been going for 10 years. And it's going to be monstrous. It's going to be gigantic. And 100%, I am excited about the future. And so we are going to keep growing as a nonpartisan channel. And that's rare, you guys. Nonpartisan channels, like there are some out there that, like for example, Intelligence Squared, there are some out there that don't take a stance. But wow, I got to be honest, even those, a lot of those still have an occasional video where they'll just do where it's like, well, you clearly know where they stand. And so believe me, we really do feel like we have a role and a job to do here on YouTube and Twitch and podcast. Now, if you guys didn't know this, we are on podcast. You guys, have you really not, for real? You're like, James, what are you like? We are on podcast. I'm excited that it's apparently been useful. People are like, oh, I use it when I'm working out. I'll listen to Modern Day Debate on the old podcast. Just listen to it on the go. I don't have to use my data because I download it while I've got Wi-Fi. And then, I listen to it while I'm on my commute, or maybe even while, I think someone said, while they're cleaning, like in the house. And that is totally me. Like I listen to podcasts all the time. And sometimes I even do download Modern Day Debate because sometimes my attention is split between the chat and, let's say, the debate, to where it's actually, I won't really soak in as much unless I listen to it again. But Soldier of Science said Evan can comment when he starts using, wait for it, video. Oh, Soldier of Science, he got you, Neff. Oh, man. Now, Nephilim Free, I don't know if you'd be interested. Possibly. Nephilim Free. Maybe, if you're up for it. A debate on whether or not Noah's Ark has already been found. That is a juicy topic. It's a topic we want to do. And we don't need somebody who would say, like, yes, with certainty. And we don't want anybody to do devil's advocate. We don't do devil's advocate debates here, folks. I think a lot of you guys know that. You've been around long enough to have heard it. But we tried it like once. The audience didn't like it. And that was like when we first started. That was like in our first like few months. And a lot of people, it just doesn't, more power to channels that do it. I think it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. You can learn a lot from it. But I think that it's just not our style. So we don't want any devil's advocate, but we do want someone who would say, like, yeah, I at least think it's highly probable that Noah's Ark has been found, and here's where it is, or the remnants of it, whatever it is that they might argue. And so thank you, Fish, Frog, Dolphin, who says, this channel needs to get 100 subs. Thank you for your support. And Brian Stevens, you got the reference, man. I was totally, when I said YouTube deserves a better class of moderating, and we're going to give it to him. I was actually referencing Batman, so that's right. You got it, Brian. That's impressive. I'm glad you got it. I was thinking, I don't know if anybody will catch that. But Farron Salas, thanks for your support, my friend. And so I can tell you, folks, grassroots-wise, it really does. It helps when people share our content. So, like, if you find a debate that you love and you know of a friend who likes that topic, and, just, click that little share button below the video, and then, just shoot it as a text, say, oh, it's like a fun debate. Or, since you like this topic, you might get a kick out of this. Or if they really like the topic, maybe they want to come on and debate it. But yeah, Crimson Air says, hi, does RN Raw have any future scheduled debates on this platform as of now? The answer is no. We are open to it. However, when RN feels like coming back, if that happens, I don't know. The rumor is that he doesn't feel, this is just a rumor. I don't even feel like it. I don't want to say it. I could have sworn someone told me that he's like taking time away from debates. I don't know if that's true, but there was also in our case, the last debate, I was sleep deprived, you guys. I will admit, I've never said my moderation is perfect. So when I say that we love our style and there are reasons for the way we do it, it doesn't mean it never like fails or screws up. I would concede that the RN Raw versus Nathan Thompson debate that happened here, I could have moderated better. So I never said I was perfect at this. It still goes wrong sometimes. And by the way, I didn't sleep the night before that. So if just making an excuse, but the idea here is like I'll own it, and I left all of the nasty comments about me on that video because it's like, all right, you know what? We'll just leave it out there. We're not going to try to, cover anything up. And so, long story short, though, yeah, I think I could have moderated better that. And that ever since that debate, Aaron has not been enthusiastic about coming back on. I did get a response from him, but he declined the last time that I had emailed him. And so I definitely would like to have Aaron back on. Frankly, I intend to reach out to him again in the future, maybe even late this summer, because we do want to do some in-person debates in Texas this summer. If Aaron is up to it, that's when I would suspect that if we have him on again, it might be this summer. But that's up to Aaron. I have no idea. So Sideshow Nav says nothing better than MDD on podcast while sipping rum on the beach. Do you really do that? That actually sounds epic. That would be like a great time. Well, good for you. So let's see. I'm pumped to hear that though. And so the one dude, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you being with us. I see there in the old live chat. And let's see. I also see you, Hannah Anderson. Thank you for being with us. We are glad you're here again. And Albert Bitcoin, my dearest friend. Albert, if you know that I'm responding to you, because we can't tell. We still can't tell if you're a bot or a human. If you can hear me, let me know. Not Aaron. Sorry. I've got Aaron on my mind still. But yeah, I'm excited to reach out to Matt soon about a possible debate too. And that one I'm frankly more optimistic about. Aaron, I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic still. I'm an optimistic fellow. I think it's going to happen. It's all going to work out, believe me. But, we're also not entitled to any guess. We're kind of like, hey, if people don't want to come on, we have no hard feelings. But we are working on some big stuff for this summer, you guys. A lot of in-person debates. I'm thirsty for them. And I want to see some debaters cross swords in person. So it's going to be great, you guys. You're going to love it. And Fish Frog Dolphin says, James, awesome debate topic. The Salem witch trials, demonic possession, or group delusion. Oh, that is a really fun topic. If I knew of anybody who'd want to do it, if anybody out there wants to either debate the Salem witch trials, namely whether or not there is actually like genuine possession or witches, or if it was just completely all natural and, explained by, I don't know, like anachronistic McCarthyism, you could say. Whatever position you want, let me know if you want to debate that. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of theists that would want to. I don't know if a lot of theists think that there's genuine witch stuff going on, but I don't know. Sideshow Nav says, I do it every day. Wow, good for you. Oh, that's right. You do live in, is it Florida or Houston? Man, I'm sorry. It's got to be Florida. Because I remember Chris lives in Dallas. But yeah, so I remember you live in Florida. But yeah, raw nakedness. Seriously, I'm calling you out. You're just as bad as Nephilim Free. You don't respond. All of a sudden, you became too cool for school. And I'm calling you out. And it's like, fine, all right, be that way. All right. You know what? Fine by me. I'm doing fine. I'm happy. And I've got Nephilim Free. So, you know what? I like that. Albert Bitcoin just says, oh, hi, James Coons. That's a person. I can't tell. Maybe it's both. Can you have an account where it switches off between being a bot and a person? I don't know. But we are so close, you guys, to 150 likes. Believe me, you won't regret it. You desperately want to see what I have behind this curtain. It's nasty. Not really. John Smith says, have you ever thought about hosting debates on Satanism? I'm open to it, and I know that there was that fellow that went on a Non Sequitur show a long time ago, but it's like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but like, I think it's called like Leviath Satanism. There's like a strand of it. So I frankly, I'd call it so-called Satanism because it's like it's more that they're just, I think, trying to troll Christians. This particular brand. So, you know, you could say denomination, whatever you want to call it. This particular subcomponent under the umbrella of Satanism, these fellows or ladies, both, you know, all of them, people, they tend to seem to only say that they're Satanists to try to troll Christians. And so it's kind of like, well, it doesn't even seem real. Like, I think they're actually just atheists who say that. It's kind of like the flying spaghetti monster thing. That's basically what they seem to be doing. But if there are real ones, I'm open to it. Let me know. Here are the demographics we're looking for. One, we're always recognizing the fact that we have very few Muslims come on to debate. If you happen to be Muslim, shoot me an email at moderndaydebate@gmail.com if you want to debate. 2, if you happen to identify as INCEL, oh, there's one for you, raw nakedness. If you happen to identify as INCEL, if that's you and you want to do a debate on that topic, let me know. We're willing to host it. It's like, we'll take our chances with YouTube. We want to test the waters a little bit. And we've never gotten our first strike, which is, I'm kind of surprised. When the very first debate, you guys know the very first topic that we ever had on this debate channel? I'll let you guess. And then we deleted it. I deleted it like I think it was a week after, because I was like, oh my gosh, is YouTube going to like give us a strike? It was only on immigration. And I thought, I was like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. We were like breaking, you know, like, is this against terms of service? And strangely, I never just like read the terms of service. But anyway, it's time to break those rules. So if you really are INCEL, let me know, and we may actually host that topic for real. And then let's see. Did somebody say something that was like against our rules? I don't know if they did anything bad. I think that, like, did they like insult one of the guests? One thing I would say too, though, is if you're harassing somebody in chat, then we don't want you to do that either. So like, if you guys want to bring the hammer down on Augur, you can. If he's mean to, if he harasses people in chat, you can. You know, you can time him out or something. I don't care what he says about me. Like, for real, like, let him do it. And if I want to like box back with him, I'll do it. Like, don't worry about what he says about me. But anyway, raw nakedness. Am I missing social media messages? Yes, snap or text. Too cool for school. But next up, Soldier of Science says, did you see Amy Newman's after show yesterday? Very juicy. I didn't get to see it. I'm sorry. I've been behind. This has been a crazy week to where I'm super behind. But let's see. Thanks, Bob, for your patience. I just saw a text fly in. And so I am behind. It's weird that I used to, what's the word I'm looking for? I used to be quick to respond via text, and now everything's gotten slow in my life. It's but anyway, I know you're just teasing. I'm all right. Stripper Liquor says you've been timed out for repeated spam comments. But yeah, it's true. Somebody, if you're doing repetitive, then that's not good. In other words, like copy and paste. We're pretty patient to where we'll give you like warnings, but we don't want people doing what is it called? Copy and paste. And then and C-Store Visto says, James, let me, quote unquote, let me show you nasty thing behind this curtain. Me panicking, unsub, just hit the like button. That's funny. Yeah, there's a lot of nasty stuff back there. I mean, but yeah, Stripper Liquor says you're spamming somebody. So gotta let you know, you ought not spam, please. And raw nakedness getting vaccinated tomorrow. Good for you. I'm glad to hear that. Did I tell you guys that I got my first one on Monday of this week? It's the Moderna one. And so that's encouraging. And let's see. I felt tired for a day. I was pretty pooped out. That afternoon I took a nap, and I'm surviving, but it's also, admittedly, I'm a little bit tired out. I'm making it. I would say thanks, Timo, for reminding people. We do have a Patreon, you guys, and I am excited about that, as basically it's a simple, basic kind of Patreon where it's just like 3 tiers. And so if that's cool to you, I pinned it at the top of the chat. And so we are excited about that. And also, though, that one dude is talking about that famous video that you guys all seem to like so much. I've never seen this 2 girls single cup video, but I don't know if I want to either. I don't think I do. And the reason I know that is because Augurer was talking about it, so you know it's bad if he's talking about it. But thanks, Brian Stevens, for your congrats. I am excited. Yeah, it is nice that it is a kind of like, I'm excited to do in-person debates. And for me, it's like once I'm vaccinated, we're going for it. And that's by late, I would say by mid to late May. Yeah, I'll be flying around and we'll be doing some in-person dank debates, and I'm excited about it. Maybe not for sure in May. I'm still kind of figuring out and plotting exactly when it'll be, but it might be in May. But otherwise, I'm for sure hoping to do June. So, are we at 150 likes? Let's see. We're at 144. We're close though. Silver Harlow says you really do not. Ooh. Nero says do a live reaction, but don't show it. A live reaction of what? Oh, I see. Silver Harlow saying, don't look up this video that Augurer is such a fan of. I'm okay with skipping it. And Raw Neckedness, good for you on Moderna. I heard, I mean, you guys are going to be so triggered when I say this because you're going to be like, James is spreading false information, and you're going to like cry in your cornflakes. But I heard the efficacy for the Johnson & Johnson I had read. And this is like from I think it was a credible source. I'm like, I don't just read like anything and I'm like, oh, I guess it's true. Like, I got an eye for good sources, okay? I had read the efficacy is like 66%. And it's like, okay, I don't care if it's one shot. If it's 66%, that's still kind of weak. So I would say go for the big one. Go for Moderna. It's like 70% after your first shot with Moderna. Then it's like up to 95% or so after you get that second shot. And that way you'll be ready. You won't have to worry about it, and you won't be a beta. So Matter Form says don't look it up. I will not look it up. Thank you. Perfect One says somebody was inhibiting the communication of others through spamming the chat. Yeah, somebody, work with us. Come on. And Saijonaf says flying high again. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I don't know. We're 5 likes away. Seriously, you guys. I will. Nocturnal Prelude says, yes, I heard the same, James. Yeah. And then I know that they paused because of blood clots. I'd heard about that, obviously, but I wasn't too worried about that, but I don't know. We'll see. And then Matthew Simard, thanks for being here, says, eek, I prefer digging myself a hole in the ground and feed on molecules for the next 100 years than to take the damn jab. So juicy. You know what I do? I love to sell plasma, and I do it weekly. So I take a jab every Thursday and Saturday, and I love it. It's great. We're close to 150, you guys. We're at 148. And we're so close. I can tell just by looking in the chat. I'm like, Darth Revan, I know you're one of the people that didn't hit like yet. I'm just kidding. I don't know if you really are, but Stripper Liquor says that's not all. That's what almost all vaccines are, 66%. Plus that, quote, statistic is misleading. It's 100% for serious hospitalization and was tested where other strains are mRNA were not. Oh, no, that's interesting. Oh, that's good to know. Thanks for sharing that with me. And Sigma Any. Amazing. Glad you're here. But yes.
She's insane.
So we're excited about the future. Let me tell you about some of the other debates coming up. So in particular, tomorrow, should there be welfare? Yarn and Brooke versus Mouthy Infidel. Good political debate. That'll be fun. Sunday, Vegan Gains and Philip will be debating whether or not veganism is a moral obligation. Monday, Destiny returns, and he's going to be taking on Pogan. That's going to be whether or not, or I should say capitalism versus Marxism, so that should be pretty good.
Interesting.
Now, let me show you what's behind the curtain, you guys. 152 likes, thanks for your support. Seriously, you guys rock. Let me show you all of the juiciness behind the curtain. Now, you might be able to tell since last time that I have cleaned up my curtain or my wall here. So let me show you all I've got. One is, this is a plaque in the very back of the room. You can't see it, but you can see like the shine right, where is it, right here? Right here. My finger is like pointing right to where it is. That is a plaque for someone in the department who we will honor, and it's not me. I can't be nominated. Basically, it's a long story, but long story short, it's a way of honoring someone in our department for their citizenship, you could say, in which we, yeah, so that'll be cool, but I want to show you other cool stuff. One, you may have noticed, like, wow, James, it looks so clean. This is if this looks messy, this is a huge upgrade. I want to show you this. So this is my mirror. Very conceited. I always look into this thing like 100 times a day. This is my Thorin Oakenshield magnet, and then pictures of my cohort in the PhD program that came in the first year as me, and also my Schmiegel magnet. So, as well as my Justice League magnet. Can you see that one? Don't worry, I'll hold it up close. Oh. Wonder Woman. Very pretty. Always been into brunettes. But, okay, so let me show you this as well. I told you I would show you guys my gas relief tablets. I have to warn you, these I bought for I think it was 39 cents at Walmart. Maybe it was 97 cents. They don't even work. Don't even waste your money. So this is kind of some consumer research that I'm doing and sharing the results of. This is my nicotine. So I do use nicotine lozenges. I've never smoked, but nicotine is a nootropic. You do think a little bit sharper with nicotine. And so I do put these lozenges in my mouth while I'm studying sometimes, especially if it's stats kind of stuff. But you know what I'm talking about, Brian. But let me show you what else. I think I've shown you my candle. Have I ever shown you this? Vanilla. And then, let's see, do I have anything else especially interesting? I bought this. I'm a little embarrassed I still haven't used it. This is my bike lock. I don't like this type of bike lock. The reason is because that's heavy and huge. Do you really want that hanging off of your bike? I don't think so. Think about it. But still works pretty well.
Amazing stuff.
So let me put that back. But yeah, I am... I will share. Thank you guys for all of your likes and support. So seriously, do appreciate that. And then let me show you guys what else. So Augur says beta supplements. I have so many beta supplements. So much. What's the word I'm looking for? Soy products, as James W. enjoys. He loves soy products. Brian Stevens says, Nolan verse way better than Snyder verse. How dare you? I haven't even seen the new one. Very embarrassing. I'll catch up eventually. But Nero says, I didn't know you played Superman. That's funny. I appreciate that. That's one of the bigger compliments I've ever gotten. That and John Hamm. Cameron told me that. Appreciated that. Silver Harlow says, Salem would be interesting, especially if one side notices that coincidentally, quote unquote, most of the accused women had property that was seized by the state of the church. Sideshow Nav says, come on, throat. Sorry, I didn't even respond to that, Silver. What I meant to say was, had property that was seized by the state. Oh, that's interesting. If that's true, I'm like, that looks pretty bad, obviously. Sideshow Nav says, come on, throw out a go Rams. I am a Rams fan. And Nephilim Free says, James, your illusion rocks. Thank you, Nephilim Free, for your positivity all of a sudden. I'm just teasing. I actually appreciate the feedback on my lighting, because seriously, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, for real, like, I don't know about photography. I don't know about, you guys can tell, like, just kind of, this whole channel, we've been kind of building the plane as it's been taking off, right? I mean, like, I'm still learning about a ton of this stuff. James W. says, has pictures of TJump on his wall, North Korea style. It's so true. TJump. I do love my brother TJump. But yes. King 101, good to see you. Did I already say hi to you? I can't remember. But let me know, folks. I'll tell you about upcoming debates. Well, let me know. I'm always curious, like, what are your thoughts? What's on your guys' mind before we wrap up? I do want to hear. And so James W. says, thanks, I have some for you. Oh, James, you and your soy. And OXD says, I'm tired of you all bashing on soy. I eat soy every day. How dare you? Do you really? Like Soylent? Matterform says, papaya seeds for gas. You serious? Thanks for letting me know about that. Heat Shield says, get a close-up of the lock? Sure. Let me show you. It's called kryptonite, so that's how you know it's good. Any reference to Superman is good in my book. Is kryptonite, I can't remember, is it a real element? I don't think it is. But at the same time, I thought there was one element on the table where it was like, that's a real element? I thought it was only in movies. I can't remember what it was. But, yeah. Thanks for your kind words, Brooke Chavez. Seriously. Appreciate that. And then a boat. Yeah, a boot. It's the Wisconsin, the Midwest accent. Chucksta, thanks for hanging out with us. We do appreciate you hanging out with us in the Twitch chat. Ozian, thanks for hanging out with us as well over there. And Sideshow Nav, thanks for hanging out with us over there. Trying to see who else is in here in this Twitch chat still. Amazing. But yeah, for real, you guys make this channel fun. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all your feedback, your ideas, just everything. Like, I could go on and on. You guys rock, seriously. So Nephilim Free, if you say use a broad, soft light source one more time, I will go crazy. So I got it the first 3 times. I might actually, well, maybe I'll get one of those rings that that's a great idea. I just thought of it. Because a gentleman, he kindly offered, he was like, hey, James, is there like a piece of equipment that I could help the channel with? He emailed me and I was like, I don't know. And he was like, because I'd like to. And I was like, that'd be cool. But I was like, I just want to think about it because I don't know I didn't want to suggest an idea where it wouldn't be something we'd actually use. But now I know what to ask. I can say, hey, bro, I got an idea. So hopefully I can find him. So I'm excited about that. Because I was thinking for the longest time, I was like, is there really? I was like, there's nothing that we can think of. I need a good light. If anybody is, Nephilim free, if you know like a good light that I should purchase, like let me know. I am open to that. If there's one on Amazon, because I don't know what to buy. And I'm kind of like, well, like, okay, I don't know what to buy. Like, that's one of the tricks of being a noob. But Fish Drog Dolphin says, who is Albert Bitcoin talking to? Yeah, he's just kind of our local bot and sometimes human. But thank you for your kind words. Soldier of Science says, as much as I love TJump, isn't he self-proclaimed INCEL? He would be great in that debate. I don't think he's no, I don't think he is. But let's see. I would be surprised, especially because they've been branded. I mean, now they've got a pretty bad rap, right? Like I think it was like maybe a year or two ago, somebody did an act of violence, and then people were like, okay, like that group. Is it fair to say that they're like terrorists? Like, and so I don't know, like. Let's see. Manic Panda says, one debate I'm always interested in is the debate between humans are parasites versus humans are an invasive species. I'm in the invasive species camp personally. Hey, that's an interesting one for real. I'm open to hosting it. Let me know if you email me at moderndaydebate@gmail.com. If you want to do that, like let me know because that might work. So Nephilim Free says, buy a small soft box from a photo equipment store. Thanks for letting me know that. I'm writing that down, Neff, for real. I don't know if you're purposely spamming the chat, Neff, or if you're just doing it to drive me nuts. But like your messages are repeating. I don't know if you know, but anyway. James Jones, good to see you. Says, yo, James. Thanks for coming by, James Jones. And then Soldier of Science says, James uses better lighting. Will you use a camera? Oh, I do have a good camera. I've been meaning to. I was hoping to set it up over spring break. You guys are going to be like, James, why is that sitting in the box? I bought a good DSLR camera over a year ago. Gosh. And it's been sitting. I've just never had time to set it up. But I'm planning on setting it up soon. And so I think you're right. That'll look way better too. So that's a great idea. That's going to totally up. It's going to look great. I'm just excited about it. So thanks for encouraging me to do that. And Brooke, have a good night as well. Thanks for coming by. She said, have a great night, everyone. I'll see you next debate. Thank you, Brooke. And Augur says, just use a sheet of wax paper on top of printer paper and get wire to hold it in front of the light. Yeah, that's actually, that's kind of what I was thinking of, except I hadn't thought that far ahead in terms of, that's a good idea. But so we need to drag James into a soft light source, kicking and screaming if need be. That's a good idea. Not me kicking and screaming, but a soft light source. Nocturnal Prelude says, James, what up? Set it up. Nephilim Free says, James, buy a Canon camera. This is, Neff. It's the Canon Rebel, man. Nephilim Free. I've got to figure out how to use it. But you're right. It's a total waste if I don't use this because it was an investment. And I'm just like, yeah, I am a fool for not actually using it. So I've even got a tripod over there, but I've been using this kind of little camera. But anyway, so thank you guys for all your ideas, your guidance. If you do see something with the channel that's like meaningful, like that is a meaningful thing. I've been told before that my lighting is terrible. If it's something like that, then like, hey, feel free, like give me some advice. Cause I'm like, hey, I'm teachable. I'm like open to the fact that I've got a lot of ways to improve. And it's just going to make the channel that much better. So we do appreciate you guys. We hope you have a great rest of your Friday night. It's really important. I got to ask you one question before we go though. I want you to really think deeply about this one.
Are you beta male?
Really think hard about that, my dear friends, and consider, you never know. So
There's no proof of that.
but I am excited. I cannot stop.
I absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Seriously, we'll be back tomorrow night. I love you guys. Thanks for all of your support. Seriously, you guys make this channel fun. Seriously, you really do. Thanks for all of your encouragement, everything. Seriously, everything. Thank you guys. So thanks for your kind words and your love in the chat. Hannah Anderson said, have a good rest of your night, James. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody else. Thanks for all your support. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable, everybody. Take care.
Yeah. I'm not dying. Get out of here.
And Rodent last name. Thanks for your super chat coming in last minute. I appreciate it. Just want to personally say thank you. He said $5 towards your Everyone Recommends a Thing fund. Thank you, Rodent last name, for your support. So we're excited about the future, and that does help because, yeah, it's thank you for your support. I'm excited, you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your night. It's always fun. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable, everybody. Love you guys. Take care.